Let's go Mets. Let's go Mets. Let's go Mets. Yeah.
You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Orange and blue till Mets do us part. Spring training, oh yes, it's the start. City Field gritty till Mets do us part. Hit home runs and knock it out the park. Big Apple till Mets do us part. You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Listen to the show till Mets do us part. John from Brooklyn, Ibby reps NJ. With the other team, I don't care what your friends say. Mets fans, we focus like a sensei. Listen to the podcast Monday, Wednesday. Made a couple bad plays, but we still won. Character, yup, we're gonna build some. Are you gonna check the pod? It's real fun. Just like Mookie, I will, son. So invest with your heart. Orange and blue till Mets do us part. Spring training, oh yes, it's the start. City Field gritty till Mets do us part. Hit home runs and knock it out the park. Big Apple till Mets do us part. You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Listen to the show.
Available now on all streaming platforms. If you love the New York Mets, check out Till Mets Do Us Part. Enough rapping. Let's get to yapping.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? We are live with Til Mets Do Us Part on YouTube, on Twitter, on Substack, like we are each and every week. If you're looking for the second YouTube layout, we've scrapped it for this week. It's something that we're trying. We do the mobile view. We do the desktop view. We're going back and forth on it. There's been mixed reviews from the live audience out there. So we'll get rid of it this week after doing it for the last 2 weeks. Maybe we'll bring it back. Maybe we won't. We'll see what happens. Anyway, John Saponaro coming to you from North Hollywood, California. And that means my co-host, Matt Ibanez, holding things down in New Jersey. Ibby, like clockwork, the Mets give us plenty to discuss
always
each and every single week. We have a wonderful guest joining us on the show here today, somebody we've been looking forward to trying to get on the show for a while. Her insight will be much, much, much appreciated, especially on the eve of the winter meetings, which should be really active for the New York Mets. They make a big signing with Devin Williams. Somehow it's controversial, whatever. We'll get into all of it. But before we
doing pretty good, John, as always. It's Wednesday, the red light's on. I'm always excited to be talking Mets with you. And of course, our chat that is always hopping. It looks to be very active at the moment. I'm sure it's going to get even more active once we introduce our guests. I'm sure they got plenty of questions. We'll get to as much as we can once we start getting things rolling. It gets a little bit tough sometimes with the chat, but we will do our best to navigate. But all in all, I'm doing well. I'm excited to talk some Mets baseball about what has gone on in the past week and what looks to be potentially going on in the future. So let's get into it. Let's have some fun.
Let's have some fun indeed. Let's do a quick roll call out here in the chat, making sure we've got everybody checking in so far. We have Shark Vader Studios. Lazy Mary is here doing 12 insults of Christmas. I don't know. We're not going to pull up any of them. So I hope you like doing it into the void, Lazy. We have Mike Laverty checking in. Corey Holzer is here as well. Jeff Cohen saying, keeping us on our toes with regards to dropping out that second YouTube layout. Hey, that's what we got to do.
Hey,
we have Darren Rivera back. Armand is amazing is here. James Dolling. KP Klink is here. Who else we got? We got Brad. We have Douglas Barnes. We have Joshua likes graham crackers, who I think might be a new.
Who doesn't? I like graham crackers.
Who doesn't like graham crackers?
I like
That could be a graham cracker crust cheesecake any day of the week. Welcome to the show. If you are new-ish, welcome back. But not a commenter I've seen before. We have Blast Radius here. Chrissy checking back in. Hey, guys. Hey to you as well.
Hey.
Ethan KL, Mr. Nobody, Will White. And that is it for the live commenters so far to this point. 68 viewers on us. But like you said, that number will no doubt increase as it continues to. And right on cue, Carlos Ortiz and Christine G jumping into the chat. But without further ado, let's get to our guest. We've kept her waiting long enough backstage. She can hear us. We can't hear her. Let's change it. Mets writer for the New York Daily News. It is Abbey Mastracco. Abby, how are you? Thank you for joining the show here today.
Thanks for having me. I'm Doing well. It's the off season. I get to sleep in and I don't have to wear real clothes. I can just wear sweats all day or workout clothes all day.
Well, you get to sleep in, but it's about to be a busy week for you, I'm sure, because you leave for the winter meetings. I guess they start Monday. You don't have to give us your travel itinerary, but you got to be leaving pretty soon, right?
Yeah, I leave on Sunday morning for the winter meeting. So I'll check in with what's going on in the hotel lobby, the bar on Sunday when I get in, and then Monday everything kicks off.
I mean, it's such an exciting time for baseball fans, and it's such a uniquely odd experience because baseball fans all over the world wait with bated breath for a bunch of basically baseball suits and then people who cover the teams.
No, not baseball suits. They all wear quarter zips. Every single one of them. They all
quarter zip season.
And like these Lululemon tech pants. They except for Dave Dombrowski, Dapper Dave Dombrowski. I appreciate he wears a sport coat often and like actual khakis instead of tech pants. He has style.
You know what? I will. I'm happy to hear that because I'm not a big fan. I don't want to talk down on this stuff, but I'm not a big fan of the quarter zip. Yeah. I'm not a big fan of the it's like tech bro.
I'm glad I didn't wear mine today then.
It's
I was
very much
close
like
to wearing
tech bro.
Yeah.
It's very much like tech bro outfits. And they all look the same too. So like you really have to like key in on their credentials to see like what team they're from if you don't recognize them, or like they all look the same. Like it's not baseball streets, it is baseball quarter zips.
Mr. Nobody, a man after my own heart, saying tech pants ? Yeah, if you don't know what tech pants are, leave it that way. Let's just say that. Rosie K saying quarter zips are in style now. I disagree. We had Terry Collins on the show about a year ago, and then he did the QBC, and he'll be back at the Queens Baseball Convention coming up in about a week and a half. But he's a big proponent. He said, "Hey, it's the big leagues. You got to wear a jacket." That's what he always said, and I
agree.
Yeah, I try to follow that mindset. But it is such a unique experience because baseball fans are kind of, like I said, waiting with bated breath for. I mean, I know players can go and some players do go, and seems like lately more players will go with their representation, but it's essentially like a baseball conference that outsiders should have no interest in, but yet every fan waits for a huge Jeff Passan bomb or somebody to just drop some kind of major signing. And I can't think of any other sport that functions the way that the baseball winter meetings do. So I don't know. It sounds like it's a lot of fun. I've never been. Do you have fun when you go?
It's a lot of standing around and waiting for something to happen, waiting to see who's at the bar. I try and like keep my drinks. I try and keep it to like a 2-drink minimum and just sort of nurse drinks because I don't want to make a fool out of myself like most of us probably did in Las Vegas at the GM meetings a few weeks ago. That definitely, I think we all maybe imbibed a little bit too much there. You got to have some fun with it, but it's a lot of standing around. It's. I would actually compare it to the NHL draft. I covered hockey for a decade, I think. And the draft is similar to the winter meetings in that you've got everybody in one spot. So that's kind of when the ball gets rolling. That's why trades get made, signings happen. Hockey, of course, is a salary cap sport. So it has, you kind of have a deadline for free agency. Everything gets done within the first few days of July. But the draft is really where a lot of the off-season movement happens. But the difference is like at the baseball winter meetings, all of the GMs, all of the teams have suites at these massive hotels. At the NHL draft, you get to see them all on the draft room floor. It's a little bit different now that they decentralized it. But the previous draft, you could see them all on the draft room floor because you're sitting basically in the stands of an arena. And sometimes that leads to like a lot of speculation, like, oh, that GM's getting up he's on the phone and he's talking to that GM. And a few years ago, when the Coyotes were still in Arizona, now they're obviously in Utah, their entire draft team, their entire front office wore matching suits. And that was quite a sight to see, especially for a franchise like that like, was sort of notable for not paying its rent to the arena. It was like you pay for matching suits. It was like a 2-for-1 special at Jose Bank. Like you don't get that at the baseball winter meetings because the teams are all in suites. But it's it is similar in that it's the 1 week of the year when everybody from one sport is in one place. So naturally you start talking to each other, whether it's like over the phone or I mean, I'd imagine that they're not sending like Morse code signals through the walls, but that'd be fun if they were. That'd be really fun.
We've got a lot of comments coming in. Joe DeMeo, great host over at the Mets Pod, saying, John, I wear so many quarter zips. Watch it. Ibby, we were talking about, maybe having Joe DeMeo pop on with us at the Queens Baseball Convention. Now, I don't know. I may have ruined it because.
I hope not.
At the QBC.
Yeah, I think so. But if you wear a quarter zip and Joe wears a quarter zip, I'm not wearing a quarter zip.
Then clearly I got to change my entire outfit that I had planned out. So thank you, but I'll figure it out either way. But don't. I'm just happy, like I said before, I didn't wear the quarter zip because clearly you guys are having your feelings that I would have really set the show off on the wrong foot. But clearly, it's time I think to get into some chatter when it comes to our New York Mets. That being said.
I wanted to use it as a segue, Ibby, because, Blast Radius says, what about mock turtlenecks? We're not going to talk about mock turtlenecks, but I think all of this mock conversation mock trades, right?
Mock trades, maybe. Yeah.
No, but all of this conversation about fashion is impromptu, but kind of apropos, because there was an article that came out. We're not going to spend a ton of time about it, about the disagreements that happened in the Mets clubhouse and the lack of chemistry and the lack of good vibes in 2025 as compared to 2024. And it seemed like it was two stories. There's this McNeil and Lindor drama that has endured since Lindor's first year here. And then there was this sort of, Lindor likes fashion, but Juan Soto doesn't like fashion sentiment that was put out there. So, Ibby, just again, really briefly, I'll just say this before I bounce it over to you. Yeah. I think the whole thing is huge, nothing burger. But your thoughts on it? Go ahead.
I would say that I too think that it's nothing. My initial thought right away was with the McNeil and Lindor stuff. Especially the game you're looking at. It was a 10-2 loss. The play that was potentially in question was a delayed double play flip. Which then leads to 2 pitches later, a 2-run homer is hit or 3-run homer is hit to just, more, salt in the wound of an ass kicking of a game, really. So anyone who's played sports knows that you get hot at teammates, things happen, you get pissed off like that. That's what I thought of right away. Like, I know that they have their, quote unquote, they have their own chilly relationship. But in terms of that situation, like, I didn't think anything of it. I've always thought coming into this offseason that Jeff McNeil might get traded anyway. So this was really nothing to me. It was the back end stuff like the Soto and the Lindor stuff where I didn't really care for it because it came across a little bit too gossipy for me. I felt like it was reaching. I felt like it was reaching in some areas. And I thought that I thought Disha Thosar's article, actually, when she was quoting people from the clubhouse, when she posted that back in September, I thought that was a little bit more on par with what people were looking for. Maybe they forgot about it because there's always recency bias with things. And it's a nothing time right now for baseball. We're waiting for news, so we hop on everything. So in general, not an article that I enjoyed. And I'm with you, John. I chalk it up as a nothing burger.
Well, we have somebody here with us that covers the New York Mets. Abby, we're not going to ask you to comment on the report or the reporting of somebody else, but just in your experience, was there a vibe shift from the 2024 New York Mets to the 2025 New York Mets within the clubhouse? Now, obviously, winning cures a lot. The 2024 Mets went on a massive run. The 2025 Mets are one of the biggest disappointments in modern MLB. So obviously, there's going to be a vibe shift there where things aren't great when you're not winning. But was there something tangible that you could point to that you would say, something was amiss before the losing ever happened? Something was amiss in spring training. Something was amiss when they had the best record in Major League Baseball. Anything like that?
I don't think anything was amiss, but listen, the vibes change every year. I spent a lot of time in spring training and early part of the season asking guys, how do you carry over the momentum from 2024 when things were so much fun? And, Francisco Lindor and Brandon Nimmo both were very honest about saying you can't. Every year things are different. Every year there are different players, and some of the same players might be going through different things. There was no sort of tangible, like this turned into a negative place, a negative atmosphere. I think baseball's a big roster. There's a lot of people in that clubhouse. Every team has their own sort of groups. It's like sitting together at the lunchroom, certain guys gravitate towards the Dominican guys always gravitate towards one another. The American guys, especially if they played college, tend to gravitate towards one another. You don't have to be best friends. Soto and Lindor were certainly, professional. And there were times where I saw Jeff McNeil playing with Francisco Lindor's kids. When things go wrong, people are going to get upset. If anything, that shows some fire. I don't think you have to be best friends with all of these guys. It's not like that. You go through these really good times together, and that brings you closer, and you go through really hard times together, and then you kind of gravitate more towards the people that you're more comfortable with in the clubhouse. I think sometimes fans tend to look at this as like, they might have spent some time playing sports in high school or college or something like that. When you have people that are more familiar, like a high school locker room, you've got people that you've probably grown up with in your same hometown. Whereas a professional sports locker room, you've got guys that come in from different countries that don't speak the language very well. So it's completely different. I don't think you can compare. When I see some fans online always saying like, well, I would have never done this in a high school locker room, because you can't compare that. These are professionals. They have families. They're going to have closer relationships with others than, Jeff McNeil has always been close with Pete Alonso, and Lindor is close with Pete Alonso as well. You're just going to sort of gravitate towards the people that you're comfortable with when things are going badly. I don't believe they had any like major team meetings this year. Like, in 2024, they had that players only meeting, and that was led by a number of players. There's some misconceptions out there that, JD Martinez was a huge leader in that clubhouse. Yes, he was, but there was a lot of leadership in that clubhouse between Lindor and Nimmo and Alonso and Marte. So there was no tangible, this turned bad because of this. There was nothing really that I could pinpoint when things started going badly either. But the vibes are going to shift every year. That's just how it works. Things are going to be really different without Brandon Nimmo in that clubhouse next season. And I am curious to see if somebody sort of steps up and fills that role that Nimmo's leaving, because those are huge shoes to fill. Nimmo's, we all know Nimmo's a great guy, but he's a great leader as well. So I do think that what Mike Puma wrote is relevant, because people have wanted to know how Juan Soto has fit in to the clubhouse, and he's fit in with the Dominican guys, just like every other Dominican guy. And I see him talking to younger players all the time. I don't think that there's any tension. I just think that you're going to be better. You're going to be closer with other teammates, with some teammates than others. He got very close to Starling Marte. Marte also got close with Ronnie Mauricio. So I do think it's relevant, because Soto is such a big part. People want to see somebody with that contract step up and be a leader. He doesn't have that personality, and that's okay. He's actually somewhat shy. He can be quiet at times. I asked him during spring training, what's something that a lot of people don't know about you? And he said, I'm shy. I'm not the most outgoing person. So he found his place where he found it. I think there was expectations of him to be this like really vocal leader, but that's just not him. And it doesn't have to be him.
Yeah, I think a lot of what you said is well, you know what? I'll let Will White give you your literal flowers here by saying, well said, Abby. I think, again, you're connected, you're in the clubhouse, you talk to the players, but also the comment you made specifically about a lot of people often be like, I didn't do that in high school, or I didn't do that in college, but specifically in high school, it's like, yeah, everybody has the same experience. You're all from the same town. That's what high school is. These are people from different cities, different states, different cultural backgrounds, different countries, different parts of the world where the climate is different, where everything is different. It's hard to all get on the same page. And like Chrissy says, they're just coworkers at the end of the day. It's not that serious. We have I guess a bit of breaking news that's Mets adjacent. Cedric Mullins to the Rays, apparently. While we were talking, Abby nodding her head. I don't know if you got an alert or anything while you were talking.
I saw it, yeah.
But it seems like Cedric Mullins going to the Rays. Look, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about Cedric Mullins because he wasn't good here. He was never coming back, much like Ryan Helsley wasn't. But Ibby, this is the second show in a row where news on a now ex-Met dropped during the show. Abby, so I'll just ask you really quickly. This seems like a good landing spot for somebody like Mullins, who did not play up to his ability with the Mets. And, I don't know what the deal looks like. I don't know if anybody does right now, but, the Rays tend to be a soft landing spot for a lot of guys like in Mullins' situation, where it's like, hey, let's pay this guy a little bit less coming off of a down season. Let's see if he can rebound. So he was never coming back here, but the Rays seem like a place where he could go and maybe thrive.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the money or the contract terms right now, but that seems like a nice place for him to have, sort of a prove it year. And Mullins is a really good guy. There was something I really didn't like at the end of the season, that I saw on social media. I saw fans saying, like, who did you hate most on the team this year, Mullins or Helsley, or there was some other people? And it's like, man, these guys are trying. Cedric Mullins, I had a really good conversation with him where you could tell, I think it was in Miami. It was the very last weekend of the season. You could tell how much his performance weighed on him, not being good for a team that, traded for him, that had high expectations for him. You're trading for a guy because you want them. He knew he was coming somewhere that wanted him, and he struggled, and he took it really hard, man. I wrote a story at like halfway through the conversation. I felt like I needed to almost like console him. I don't like to break that third wall unless it's like very necessary. I like to keep interviews, more professional, but like, he's a human, and Ryan Helsley was a human. And I really didn't like that fans were trying to rank who they hated the most out of this team this year, because this really was a tough time for Cedric Mullins, who was also a really great guy in the clubhouse. He was a leader in Baltimore for so many years, and very close with Adam Jones. Helsley I got to know a little bit as well. And the thing that kind of struck me about Helsley is like, he has a typical closer mentality that he can just bounce back very quickly. They have very short memories. You have to, as a reliever, especially as a closer. And Helsley, when I talked to him about, pitch tipping issues and things like that, was very honest and candid, but he was also sort of laid back about it. You could tell that he wanted to fix it, but it was like, if you let this bother you, you're going to let it eat you alive. And that's not going to be good when you're on the mound, or when you're in the, when you're in the outfield either, when you're trying to perform. So I think both of those guys found some good landing spots, and they were really good guys to have around. And I just, they wanted to perform. They really did. I mean, I remember Cedric Mullins saying something like this. I wish I could have done better for the fans. I really wish I could have done better for the fans. It was really hard for them. And I'm glad that Helsley, I think that's a really good in Baltimore. I think that's a really good move for the Orioles. And I hope Mullins rebounds in Tampa.
Yeah, a lot of people in the comments are saying it is, in fact, a one-year deal for Cedric Mullins. So thank you guys for scouring Twitter, throwing that out there. Nobody's mentioned the money yet, whatever. Not super relevant, but I'll just give you a moment to comment on this, and then we'll move on to Devin Williams, which is, of course, much more topical for our New York Mets. But, this is something that you and I deal with on this show all the time. There's a lot of comments coming in of people, dragging Cedric Mullins, even on the heels of what Abby's saying. Look, you and I, Abby may or may not know this, like, our show is not affiliated with the New York Mets. Our show is not affiliated with any major network. We never have been. The only responsibility we have is to ourselves as fans. You and I are fans first, but we're also people who have the opportunity, whether it's on this show, whether it's through relationships we've made, whether it's through the QBC, we've interacted with a lot of players and coaches and executives and, people in sports media. And you do have to take the emotion out of it. I know as fans, it's easy to be like, wow, Cedric Mullins sucks. But there's a limit to how far you can take that stuff. There really is. And somebody mentioned it in the comments, saying that like Stanik's family was getting nasty messages and death threats. And that's so over the line. It doesn't even need to be addressed. But I do think that there's one thing to be like, look, this guy's really bad. And like, I'll partake in it sometimes with tongue in cheek jokes and stuff, but you can't drag these guys and you can't do it from an emotional standpoint. And, good for Cedric Mullins. And I hope he bounces back.
Yeah, I think the lengths that some people go to when it comes to insulting and things of that nature is a little bit too much, and that's what, unfortunately, that's the downside of social media. But when we talked about Cedric Mullins coming onto this team at the deadline, like we prefaced it by saying, look, he's an up and down type of player. He when he goes through his rough spells, they're pretty bad. And I said that if he's going to come in on the back end for this lineup, I said when he's down, it might be hard for him to get back up, and that ended up proving to be what happened. And it's unfortunate, it is, but like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You wish him all the best, and hopefully he can have a little bit of a bounce back year so he can find himself a new contract or a new team, or even find a home in Tampa moving forward. But all in all, I liked the deal when he came in. I thought it would be a lot better. It just didn't happen, and you just chalk it up to as a loss. That's it. Just an L.
Also, not to relitigate the past here, but it would have been malpractice. We talked about it at the time. Maybe if the Mets didn't go out and acquire a true center fielder. Jeff McNeil did an admirable job, but it was clear that his body was not going to hold up to playing the rigors of center field. I said it a million times on this show. You joked about it on this show that he would never play center field, and then he did. I said that no team trying to play in the postseason and make a deep run can realistically have Jeff McNeil as their starting center fielder. It doesn't mean that it's a knock on him, but you can't win that way. Yoenis Cespedes
started in right field.
Like Yoenis Cespedes is 400 times the athlete that Jeff McNeil was or is, whatever. And he cost us playing in the World Series out of position, not in a corner outfield spot. So anyway, it's something the Mets had to go do. I understand why they didn't reunite with Harrison Bader. It was a been there, done that situation. Luis Robert didn't get traded. Duran didn't get traded. There was no other option. They got a guy, and he just wasn't good. You move on. So we will move on to Devin Williams, who gets a 3-year deal, no opt-outs, some deferrals. Steve Cohen has a ton of money. I don't really care about the money, except for the standpoint that the Mets have basically set up this contract, Abby, so that they are covered if Edwin Diaz does not return, but they also can stomach paying Devin Williams as the setup man to Edwin Diaz if he does return. I don't think there's a single downside to this deal, but it seems like some people don't like it because they watched him struggle across town and because they think that Pete Alonso broke him at the during the wild card series the year before. But this is a guy who was an elite reliever for his entire tenure prior to getting to the Yankees last year. And I don't think you can write that off when he's 31 years old and he finished really strong and his numbers under the hood were great.
ERA is not everything. I think a lot of people are focusing on the ERA from this year. And if you look at his metrics, that's why the ERA was sort of puzzling, because his underlying metrics are pretty similar to how they've been throughout his career. It doesn't seem that stuff-wise, his stuff was still really good. And I think it can be good for in New York, whether it's the Yankees or the Mets, because he did have some really good stretches. He finished the season strong. He was really good for the Yankees early in the season. I think he's a great setup. I think it's a great setup option. This is what the Mets envisioned when they got Helsley at the trade deadline. They wanted 2 elite guys at the back end there. And Devin Williams' changeup is still, and that airbender it's nasty. He doesn't give up a lot on it. 2024, he gave up no home runs on that pitch until Pete Alonso. Mm-hmm. So I do think that I think he's an insurance policy if they don't go after, or if they don't get Diaz. Agreed. I know that they are still trying to pursue Diaz. I don't know how hard that pursuit is at the moment. But I do think that they have to they've got to go full court press on Diaz. I really think they should, because the thing about Devin Williams, he's sort of a tier below Diaz. Why settle for second best? When you can have the best, and they have had one of the best in Edwin Diaz. Why settle for just second best? So yes, it's a good insurance policy, but I think that they need to really go full force with Edwin Diaz. It sounds like the hang up right now is the years. David Stearns doesn't seem to like some of these long-term contracts, but sometimes that's what you have to do sometimes to get these guys. You've got to pay for the decline to get them in their prime. That's how free agency works in every sport. It's unfortunate. You don't like signing guys to long-term contracts after the age of 30, but that's what it takes to get it done sometimes. So, maybe have some opt-outs after a few years, a team option or mutual option, even something like that. I really think that they need both of those guys in the bullpen, and that's going to set that bullpen over the edge, because then they've still got Minter and Rayleigh. They've got some of those guys who have high leverage experience. That would be 4 really good guys with high leverage experience, 2 left-handers. They haven't had a whole lot of good lefties in the bullpen the last few years.
Yeah.
So I think adding Diaz to that, they could be potentially building a super bullpen.
Yeah, Ibby, we've talked about it on this show. I've said it. I thought Diaz is the number 1 priority for the Mets, even slightly ahead of Pete Alonso, because I think you can draw a line to where the Mets are competitive without Pete Alonso by going out and getting other bats. I don't think there's a way where you can say the Mets will be as good without Edwin Diaz. Again, the Devin Williams signing hedges that a little bit. But to Abby's point, why get second best, which is what Devin Williams is? It's a great consolation prize, but why get second best when the only thing standing in your way is money to go out and get first and second best? It's a move the Yankees would have made in the 90s and early 2000s. It's a move the Dodgers would make now. If you want to compete with these teams, you can't be shy because of money. I get it. 5 for $100 is a lot of money for a closer who's over 30, and closers are fickle. And even Diaz has had his down stretches here, but I don't think that any free agent contract should make you upset if you go 1 year beyond what you're comfortable with, because it's just 1 extra year. I mean, Abby said you paid for them all on the back end, and that's true. But if the Mets are like, okay, we're good with Diaz at 4 years, then you be good with it at 5 and just get the thing done, because this is a great move, Devin Williams, in a vacuum. It's a perfect move if they sign Diaz.
Yeah, and I think it was Jerry Blevins who said it the other day, mentioning how, when he looks at this deal of what Diaz wants and saying how he wants 5 years or what have you, that the idea of, the back end being ugly, he's like, I don't care about that. Like, I know what this player is going to be on the front end. And he said years 1, 2, 3, and possibly even 4 of what this person can be, even as he starts to go on the downhill, still thinks he could be an effective pitcher. I've been echoing what you've been saying as well, John. The last handful of weeks, the number 1 priority for this team was Edwin Diaz. I do think that having the insurance policy of Williams does help you when it comes to negotiations and things like that, where you're not shut out. God forbid somebody throws a ridiculous number at Edwin Diaz and you lose him, and then Williams ends up going somewhere else. You have something to protect yourself, which I'm fine with. But yes, I'm with both of you. I want both of these guys in the back end of this bullpen, so it allows us to further the buzzword, if you will, that is run prevention, because it's not just about defense in terms of that. It's about making sure that the other team's not putting the ball in play or having an opportunity to score runs. So if I can have 2 guys in the 8th and 9th that are getting strikeouts at a near 40% clip each, that's what you want. That's how you win ball games.
Jump back into the comments really quick. Here's a funny one, a couple funny ones. Truman Quinn says Diaz can just DH in year 5.
That's a good one.
Gab saying Diaz has the leg length of a spry 29-year-old, though. So really, you take a couple years off of his age with regards to that. Rosie saying, I don't mind the Williams signing so long as Stern signs Diaz. Failure to sign Diaz will further erode the trust with the fan base. I agree that it will. I don't agree that it should, even though I want Diaz back. Because here's the thing, Abby. I feel like the Mets are going to need to sign another high-end relief pitcher, whomever that may be. So to your point from before, why not just go get the best when money is the only thing standing in the way? They're going to need to pair Williams with someone, whether that's Diaz, which we hope, or Peter Fairbanks, or Suarez, or someone else. They were never going to bring Helsley back like we discussed. Maybe you go back and revisit Rogers, who was really good here. But they're going to have to go out and spend money on one more reliever. I get that Peter Fairbanks is not going to get $20 million a year like Diaz would. He's probably going to get half that. But again, when you're Steve Cohen and you're selling gold toilets and you have more money than any single owner in the sport, I don't think you should nickel and dime with an extra year, especially when this isn't really, I guess this is my point, this isn't really a luxury to have Williams and Diaz. The Mets need another back-end guy, so go get the best one. To me, I think it's something they really have to do. If a team blows Diaz out of the water, I kind of get it, but I will be a little upset. I will. I think they need the 1-2 punch to compete with the best teams in the league.
That's valid. And also, if they're hung up on years, look at Diaz's injury history, because he doesn't have a history of arm injuries or elbow injuries. The knee was a fluke. The knee was, that was what it was. Celebrating at the WBC. That's as fluky Mets-like as he can get. So, but otherwise, he's been very durable. So if you're worried about what he's going to look like in 5 years, I don't know that you have to really worry that much about a guy like this.
That's a great point. Ibby, before we bounce over to you, this one was from Shark Vader before we started, or right as we started. Why is everyone losing their damn minds over Devin Williams? Do fans forget that Sugar was terrible his first season with us? Fans were saying we lost the trade at the time. Now no one would say we lost the trade, which is also why you can't say if you lost or won a trade in the moment, but whatever. Can we all just relax? They follow up by saying, and see what else Stearns has up his sleeve. All we've heard is that Stearns needs to go out of his comfort zone. Well, he did that with this contract. It'd be lots of really, really, really good stuff in there from Shark Vader, but a lot of people don't want to hear that. A lot of people just want to say small market Stearns, and they want to base it on nothing. They're saying small market Stearns. Well, he may have just paid $13 million for a setup, man. That's not small market.
No, it's not small market. Obviously, we know Shark Vader. I think it's Sydney, because she's on a different account right now, but she frequents the show often, frequents the chat often, and saying a lot of the stuff that we've been saying as well. Because, look, I like allowing these things to play out, and I understand why people are a little bit hesitant in the moment when it comes to Nimmo Simeon, when it comes to Williams, and what's going to happen with Diaz. Because while those moves are ones that you can understand, they're also moves that are very much, but what's next? Like, we're still waiting for the other shoe to drop a little bit. So it's like you want to react. And that was a lot of the reactions that went out, especially after Williams. Like, everyone was so, hesitant or like confused a little bit, because automatically, as we know on social media, everyone just jumps to Shark and they're just like, oh my God, Edwin Diaz is gone. It's over. They signed this guy. Like, you're not paying a setup man this much money. It was like, well, no, you can. And we saw that they wanted to have two dominant people on the back end. Didn't work with Helsley. So maybe now he gets Williams. Stearns knows Williams from Milwaukee and knows him as a setup man, and he thrived with a dominant closer, where one could say that Edwin Diaz and Josh Hader, cut from the same type of cloth. Coming over here, not having the pressures of being a closer. We saw without being a closer for the Yankees while he was setting up for Bednar, like, he was kind of back to being the Devin Williams that we all know and love from a baseball fan perspective, and striking people out at a near 40% clip. So all in all, I think that this is the plan. Could they be blown away, or could Edwin Diaz be blown away by someone? I know John Heyman said that this could come down to a battle between the Jays and the Mets when it comes to Diaz's services. Obviously makes a ton of sense for the Jays to be in this market, because they could use a guy that could slam the door. I know that wound is still very fresh. It's going to be fresh for a handful of years now, but I know that makes a lot of sense for them. So if someone comes out and says, we're going to give you $150 million, well, then I think he's going to go. But I still question if teams outside, of the Mets being the main suitor to bring him back, because I question if they're going to pay this huge contract, these exorbitant amount of years, 4, 5, 6 years, $100+ million with the qualifying offer attached as well. A lot of teams are very hesitant when it comes to that. I still question if the market is going to be as big for him as many think it is. I still think he's going to come back to the Mets. I do.
Before we move on from the Devin Williams situation, I do want to isolate, Abby, Devin Williams just for a moment, because we started to talk about him and then we talked immediately about the impact on Diaz and what's next for the Mets. We kind of got that out of the way. And you've mentioned some things, Ibby's mentioned some things, I've mentioned some things about Devin Williams, but I do want to highlight it for the viewers, for the listeners now. You're talking about a guy who the under the hood numbers look really, really good, despite the fact that, like you said, ERA is not everything. The ERA is 4.79. It's not pretty. Prior to joining the Yankees, he had a career ERA that was under 2. It was 1.86. His expected ERA last season, 2.09. His fielding independent pitching, 2.68. His expected batting average against 1.95. His K rate, like Ibby said, at 35%. His whiff rate, 38%. This is a guy who all of the numbers check out, that the stuff is still elite. The airbender is still an unhittable pitch. And I'll add to the fact that much like Edwin Diaz in his first go around with the Mets, Edwin Diaz had that great year and he could have just left, and he didn't. He signed with the Mets before he even talked to anybody else. Devin Williams could have left New York, but instead decided, I like it here. I like the city. I want to stay. I don't think the Yankees are going to bring me back, but there's a guy I know in David Stearns right across town, and I want to be here. I don't think you should or could discredit any of those things from Devin Williams. I think he's primed for a big-time bounce back.
Yeah, I was reading some of the quotes that he gave the Yankees reporters after the season ended, and he talked about how much he liked it here. He liked riding the train. It was an adjustment, of course. I mean, you can't expect for there not to be an adjustment when you go from the smallest market in the league to the biggest one. And especially a place like the Yankees, people like to say the pinstripes are heavy. They are. It's not an easy place to play. This is not an easy city to play in for a lot of reasons. We go over this every season, every off season. The spotlight burns a lot brighter here than it does in Milwaukee, but a little bit brighter here than it does in every other city. But if he really took to it, as he said he did, then yeah, this is a great move. I mean, if he made the necessary adjustments, him and his family seem to really enjoy it here, then I don't see what the issue is. If the whole can he perform in New York issue, I don't see that as an issue with him. I don't know about some of the other closers, and I do think that's another reason to bring back Diaz, because he can't perform here. But I think that Devin Williams, he bounced back pretty good at the end of the season. His numbers towards the end of the season were much better than they were in the middle. It was really the summer where he struggled the most. But once he looked like the same guy that he was in Milwaukee at the end of the season and in the postseason as well. So I think he can carry that into next season with the Mets. And he signed for 3 years. So he knows there's some security with 3 years. Your family's going to be in one place. Getting traded like he did last year, it's a little uncertain. You get traded out of a place like Milwaukee to New York. He's made the adjustments. I think it's good. I think he'll be fine.
Maybe Truman Quinn says, I don't mind Stearns tough loving us as long as there's results, which I think is a fair sentiment, but also a fairly obvious one, right? Yeah. Like no one's going to mind it if it works. And then the last thing here on Devin Williams, Shark Vader, Cindy saying in reply to Armand, he did, talking about Williams, had like 4 or 5 offers reportedly, and some of them at least were to close. He wanted to come here even with the uncertainty. Again, the Mets did pay a premium to have him deal with that uncertainty, but I think this is another situation, and people could say it's boring like they did with the Pete Alonso stuff last year. This is David Stearns and his front office team really navigating this market to perfection, because they're never going to get back with Ryan Helsley, like I said earlier. Nope. What happens if Devin Williams signs somewhere else 2 days ago? Then Diaz has you up against the wall, and that's not where you want to be. So people could say, oh, I don't care how GMs play the market. I don't care about this. I don't care about that. If you're an adult fan, grow up and care about it a little bit, because this is part of it.
Yeah, you have to be able to play the market in that way, and we've seen how Stearns has jumped out in front and landed some very good deals, and we're seeing how the market behind him is starting to develop a little bit more with the money that's going out to other relievers that are starting to come off the board a little bit here and there. But you had to protect yourself. It makes too much sense, and like you said, I still think that there are plans for this team to pair up the 2 best relievers on this market. Also, from a standpoint of simply protecting yourself when it comes to the starting pitching as well, because we still don't know, and the Mets don't know who they're going to sign, who's going to take their money, what's going to happen when it comes to this trade market, because it seems like as much as we see names being talked about, and Jeff Passan putting out his article, which again, Jeff Passan putting out another article, we should probably listen, because last time he did, I'm like, Nimmo's not getting traded. Then sure enough, 4 days later, Nimmo's traded. I'm like, okay.
Passan don't miss.
So we're putting out numbers now about percentages about when guys or who might get traded. So it's been changing ever so much when it comes to who's actually available. So, the Mets have to act as though we have to get what we can get. And if we feel as though that this person can be dominant for us and help us in what we're trying to do, let's sign him. It's going to take our money. Let's get him in the building. You don't know, at the moment at least, who you're going to be able to get when it comes to furthering this whole plan of run prevention. So I'm for it. I'm a big Devin Williams fan. When we had Will on, I said it. I like Devin Williams. He's a good ball player. I would love it so much for him to be here. I would love it even more if he's setting up Edwin Diaz.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is hard to argue with that. Rosie saying, Abby, you're right. The Yankees pinstripes are heavy, but that Mets uniform is weighted.
Yeah.
It's weighted, man.
There is.
Look, you're going to the winter meetings. We opened talking about that. You're leaving on Sunday. They start in earnest on Monday. There's been a lot of talk from people like Jeff Passan, a lot of industry people, on what markets are going to move, which players are more likely to sign either during the winter meetings or shortly after the winter meetings. And a lot of that plays into what the Mets might do, because the Mets have the most money, so they're going to be linked to everybody. And now, especially since trading Brandon Nimmo, they have really opened it up where they can be linked to anybody. Do I think it's realistic they get Kyle Tucker? Probably not. Do I think it's realistic they sign Kyle Schwarber? Probably not. But they are open to that now because they've moved on from Brandon Nimmo, whose contract and his physical ability became a bit of an albatross. So, Abby, just as like an overarching view, whether it's Pete, whether it's Cody Bellinger, whether it's a deal with moving Senga or Jeff McNeil, or where do you just get the feeling, not reporting, but just as somebody who's around this team and covers this team, where do you think the Mets are trying to go next, trading for a starting pitcher? Where do you think their head's at as they prepare for the winter meetings?
I think they are trying to read the market to determine what comes next, because yes, they need starting pitching. Yes, they need another bat, whether that's Pete. I mean, I wrote today that they really do need to bring Pete back, because I don't think that you can platoon two guys there. I don't think two halves make a whole when it comes to somebody like that as a person and a player. Remember, people aren't going to show up to Citi Field to watch a Rhys Hoskins, Jared Young.
No. No.
Yeah. So yes, they can get creative now without Brandon Nimmo there. Does that mean that they're linked to Bellinger and Tucker? I don't think so. I don't see them going for Tucker, because they're not going to move Juan Soto off right field. Kyle Tucker has been a right fielder his entire career. Bellinger has more flexibility. I don't know that the Mets are linked to Bellinger at the moment. That could change, because he has the positional flexibility that David Stearns really likes. And that's also, I guess that leads me to Jeff. I know he has been a controversial player for the team the last few years with the fan base. In terms of whether or not he gets traded. So first of all, I think the Nimmo trade sent a message to anyone not named Francisco Lindor or Juan Soto. Anybody can be traded at any time. Mm-hmm. David Stearns doesn't have the sentimental feelings when it comes to these things. He is acting very shrewd, taking the emotion out of it, as we talked about earlier, which is what you have to do as a general manager. But you do have to consider the business aspect of it. Signing Pete is good business. He's going to put butts in the seats, get people to keep coming back. Jeff has positional flexibility, though, that David Stearns likes. So I don't think Jeff is next on the trade block. I think the Mets will absolutely keep Jeff around if they see that he fits in with what they're doing after they have made some acquisitions. I don't think that he's like a slam dunk candidate to get traded. But again, everyone is sort of on edge, right? Maybe not on edge, but I think Stearns sent a message to everyone that very few players are safe, and he is not afraid to shake things up, including trading away a franchise face like Nimmo. So, I think the next move for them is going to be determined by the market. Starting pitching is kind of starting to heat up right now. The GM meetings a few weeks ago, I'd asked a lot of the GMs about the closer market. They had said that one was probably going to start moving quicker than others. So maybe once the dominoes start falling and there's some guys that go, Suarez, or some of these top guys start getting locked up, then we start going into starting pitching and offense. And, last year Alonso didn't sign because there really weren't, he didn't sign until right before spring training, but there weren't a lot of first basemen that were going. He had to kind of wait until those first base dominoes fell. And the Mets have said, David Stearns has said he wants to read the market when it comes to Pete. So the market hasn't really heated up yet for a lot of these position players. It usually is pitching first as well, because you can never have too much pitching. So I think the market's going to dictate where the Mets go next. It's probably going to be starting pitching, because I think that's where the market is going to go next. And that is a priority, but the other thing is, without Nimmo, and if they don't sign Alonso, where are the runs coming from? What kind of protection does Juan Soto have?
Yeah.
It's funny that you bring that up, because with both moves the Mets have made so far, trading Nimmo for Simeon and signing Devin Williams, they are both, or they at least seemingly, precursor moves to something else. And I think no one is upset about the Mets being able to get out from Nimmo's contract and some of the inflexibility that his contract and athletic ability poses. But you are right about the flip side of it. The Mets basically created a situation where they need two bats. I would have said they needed two bats even with Nimmo on the team, but now they certainly need two bats. If it isn't Pete, then it better be somebody like Schwarber, right? Because you can't replace what Pete offers, Ibby. So when you look at this as a full scale situation, again, I don't want you to ring the Bellinger bell, but
don't tempt me. I might do it.
I know, because I understand people's apprehension with Cody Bellinger, but I do think from a positional versatility standpoint, he fits the team because he can place him first. You can DH Pete more. He can give you coverage in the outfield. You can take Juan Soto off of his feet and DH him every once in a while. You can even DH Bellinger to keep him fresh. And then you don't block anybody else. You don't have to worry about blocking Benj because he can move around. So I know it seems unlikely that they would go from Nimmo's contract and just reinvest that money in probably a worse one in Bellinger somehow.
Yep.
But to me, man, like, where are the two bats coming from then? Because if they re-sign Pete, they're not going to sign Pete and Schwarber. I mean, maybe they would, but that seems insane, right?
No, it won't happen. No, that's not going to happen because of the whole, wanting to, get him off his feet and DH him. If you're bringing in Schwarber, well, that's your only DH. And like you said, like I said last week, I'm very apprehensive when it comes to the idea of them taking that money and throwing it at Bellinger, because I'm like, you just got out from Nimmo. Like, we're getting a 31-year-old coming in now for probably like 5-6 years. I know he's a great defender. I know he fits for the short term, but again, key word there is the short term. If he was coming here for 3 years, I think that Stearns would be all over it. But he's going to want 5, 6, 7 years to get placed into a new spot and want to probably finish out his career because this is his last big contract at 31. So it's very hard to understand, which is why it's so interesting with the winter meetings around the corner, with potential trades and who's available. We've seen from multiple places how a lot of people are saying how the market, the trade market, is going to be very hot. Maybe some names that you're not even aware of. Like I just said, the past article is very interesting. But to bring it back to Pete real quick about that market and why it's so interesting. I've been saying on this show for the last year, when it came to this whole entire saga last year, that Pete was going to have a hard time getting money. And he had a hard time last year getting money. And everyone's like, no, he's going to get 5 years, 6 years. I'm like, no one's going to give this guy that many years. He's meant to be a Met. And I'm not saying that as a Met fan. I'm just saying from a needs perspective, like, it makes so much sense. Everyone looks at it and says, hey, he's going to be a Met. He's going to be a Met. The first base market dries out. Vlad goes back. Toronto's out. Boston's cheap. They make sense, but Boston's cheap, and they just said that they're not going over the second luxury tax. So that puts in question not only the idea of pursuing Pete, but retaining Bregman. So I sit here and I'm like, who's paying him? The Giants aren't spending money. They're cutting back. The Rangers aren't spending money. The Cubs don't spend money. So I'm like, when I see an article come out that says, oh, Pete and his camp are waiting for someone to come to the forefront. My response was, well, you better get comfortable, Polar Bear, because you're not moving. Like, nothing is going to happen because this market is very cruel. maybe it's unfair. People think it's cruel to first baseman. It's cruel to unathletic first baseman. I know Pete does a fine job.
It's very cruel to right-handed first baseman as well.
Right. So it's just like he makes a lot of sense to be here, but if he wants, 5-6 years, I still don't think it's coming from anybody, which is why people rag on the Mets, but the Mets are doing the right thing, because if no one's giving the guy years, why would you give the guy years? Doesn't make any sense.
You can make your own decisions though, but they wanted, Stearns was very adamant. I want to read the market when it comes to Pete. You can make your own decisions based on what he means to your club, because a few extra years of Pete it's that you still have to consider the business aspect of it. Even if he's DHing 5 years from now, he's going to have he already has the, home run record, the franchise's all-time home run record. He's going to keep setting records. And 5 years from now, yeah, he may not be a full-time player, but he's still going to put butts in the seats. He's still going to get people to come to games. He's still going to be connecting with the community. That's not a bad thing. And he's still going, if he's a full-time DH in 5 years, cool. He could still, how many guys have made a career off of, later years in their life, hitting bombs as a DH, that's not a bad deal.
You're absolutely right with that, Abby. And I would actually apply some of the logic to Pete that people were trying to apply to Nimmo. And this is not a knock on Nimmo. It's just simply acknowledging that of the three players, Alonso, Nimmo, and Jeff McNeil, unquestionably, Pete is the best player. And a lot of people were like, well, it's going to be hard to get Nimmo to waive his no trade clause because he wants the legacy of being a Met forever and having his number go up in the rafters. I even said that he's not a Hall of Fame player, Brandon Nimmo, but he could likely be a Mets Hall of Famer if he spent his entire career here. The difference is, if Pete Alonso spends his whole career here and hits 500 home runs, he might be an actual Hall of Famer who then would be a lifetime Met, whose then number would go up in, on the wall in Citi Field. So I think you have to apply some of that logic too, and realize that there is a benefit to having him. And sometimes you talked about suffering through the bad years of free agent contracts. It does become a little bit more palatable to suffer through the bad years on the back end if you are also the beneficiary of all the good years at the beginning when the player wasn't making any money, as the Mets would be in the case of Pete Alonso. So I do agree with Ibby about not bidding against yourself for a player. But if you want Pete and the numbers aren't there, I think there needs to be and this is probably more of a Boris thing maybe than even a Stearns thing, because it seemed like last year they finally came together and said, look, here's a deal. Can we, what do you like about it? What don't you like about it? What can we do to get this over with? And I think it would benefit not just the Mets, obviously, but I think it would benefit Alonso to maybe make that decision a little bit sooner rather than later. I think he's going to get the most money here. I do.
Well, I don't know how far along he is in any sort of free agency talks. Obviously, this will be a week where we find out a lot more. But I do think that there's something to be said for somebody who wants to be a Met, wants to be with this team long term. Nimmo was really sad. His press conference in Texas was, you could see the emotion. He wanted to be a Met for life. Pete has said he really loves his time with the Mets, but he really wants to win. That's what matters the most. But at the same time, how are they going to replace that run production? So he does give them a chance to win. It's not like they're signing him just as an emotional, plea from the fans. Mm-hmm. But, that is going to maybe buy some goodwill with the fans, because think about it. You guys, lifelong Mets fans, how many times have you seen your favorite players leave?
Yeah, true.
Especially homegrown players.
Mm-hmm.
Especially
they all leave.
They all leave, yeah.
Yeah. For years, you guys had to watch, Citi Field was a rotating door. And that's not the case anymore. You can build around your homegrown players now. You develop your players and you can sign them to big contracts and keep them. These are not the Mets of the past. So I do think that signing Pete, you're going to give yourself a chance to win, because he's going to provide protection in the lineup for Soto and Lindor. He's a good guy in the clubhouse, and he's also more than just a fan favorite. He's very connected with the fan base. So I think it's going to get the fans some goodwill. And I just don't know where that production is going to come from if you don't sign him, because I don't think they're going to go after Tucker. Bellinger maybe, but I don't see them giving Bellinger, 5-6 years over Alonso 5-6 years. And I could be wrong. These are just sort of my talkings with people around the team. I think Pete gives them a chance to win. I do. I think Pete gives them the best chance to win, at least in the next few years, because I just don't think you're going to be able to get that same kind of production from a Platoon or from, like a Isaac Paredes, somebody like that you can maybe get in trade.
Yeah.
Gab saying, we're talking about Pete, we can't lose the romanticism of the game or else DraftKings wins.
It's a good one. That's a good one.
Brad, does Alonso have a market now? I don't think so. Unless he wants to go to a bad team, I see Boston as the real threat. But Ibby, you already kind of refuted some of, Boston being that threat. Douglas Barnes saying Pete's biggest problem is the Mets are where he'll get the most money and nobody else wants to give him a lot of the years plus money. Sounds familiar, alluding to the fact that this is exactly where we were a year ago, talking about the exact same player in the exact same situation. Abby, we're right at about an hour. I do have a couple more quicker questions for you if you can give us more time. Not put you on the spot, but okay, cool. So some of these things you already, kind of addressed, but just a quicker answer on just from the fans here or the viewers. Blast Radio is saying, will the Mets pursue Cody Bellinger? So you said you don't think it's likely. Does something have to change? Would Pete have to sign somewhere else, in your opinion, to open up that door? Or do you think it is reasonable? Like I said, the Mets need Pete and somebody else. So is that somebody else potentially Cody Bellinger or not at all?
Potentially. They're doing their due diligence on him. I don't know that they have a high level of interest at the moment, but that could change based on, based on the market. Again, that's what's going to dictate their next move. So I definitely see it as a maybe. They are doing their due diligence on him. I know that much, but I don't know if their level of interest in him is high. It could be determined by what happens with Pete. That's very possible.
Speaking of due diligence, this is a player the Mets seem to have done that at the trade deadline. They seem to be doing it now. It's not a question, but Joshua likes graham crackers saying, I'm really hoping
I was expecting that
for Luis Robert Jr. It seems like the Chicago White Sox respectfully don't have a great clue as to what they're doing in terms of running a baseball team. So they're valuing Luis Robert Jr. as the player that he hasn't been in like 2.5 years, which is their right. But I think it's kind of foolhardy. Now, I'm not saying you trade him for Luis Angel Acuna straight up, but I think there is a path here. Ibby keeps saying that the Mets aren't going to be tied to somebody like Bellinger because he's the wrong age, wrong time. Kyle Tucker, wrong age, wrong time. Luis Robert Jr. does give you an outfielder that you can take year to year right now. Now, I don't know if he'll ever be that MVP candidate that he was, but he's certainly a player that the Mets could use. And it does fit your description and Ibby's description of, well, you're also not locked into somebody then. He's $20 million for this year only. You do have an option. So I don't know. Did the Mets ever come close to getting him at the deadline? Do you think they are going to revisit it now? Likelihood on Luis Robert Jr.?
I think they'll definitely revisit it. They were somewhat close, but the thing with Chicago, you just never can tell what the White Sox are doing, where they're going, what their plan is. It's really tough to understand. Even like talking to some of the writers in Chicago, they're like, we never know what the team's plan is, So it's when it comes to the White Sox and the Angels, those ones are ones where you're like, you could do a lot of different things and you're really going to keep people guessing, and everything you do, it might not make a lot of sense. So, I do think I think it's a possibility. They're going to check in on him again if they have not already. But I don't know what the White Sox want to do with him.
Yeah. Look, Ibby, I know I kind of alluded to your point, but I don't want to put the words in your mouth. We talked a lot last week, talked a lot at the beginning of the show so far about the long-term commitments or the lack thereof that the Mets want to get into with players that are outside their organization. So not Diaz, not Alonso. They're not the right fits. So look, Luis Robert Jr. has the upside of probably close to where Cody Bellinger's upside would get you, but he's a younger player. He's in a lot of ways even a more athletic player, and Bellinger's very athletic, but he does have probably a lower floor, although Bellinger was DFA'd at one point in his career. So do you see Luis Robert Jr.? Like, would he excite you? I know at the deadline we talked ourselves into it. So let's say the Mets do bring back Pete Alonso and the other move is Luis Robert Jr. Is that enough? Knowing that they've already traded Brandon Nimmo? I don't know. I think they could use him, but I don't know if that's enough. Do they need a third bat then?
Yeah, I don't know if it would be enough, but like I know some things were floated out there before about the Mets possibly re-engaging with Chicago and the idea of Robert coming here and Acuna being a part of a package going over there. And it's like at that point, I'm like, okay. It's like honestly, I'm not a fan of either player that much. So if it's just like trading places, I'll just take the guy with the higher upside, that being Robert. But because of what he's been over these last handful of years, it's kind of tough to get too excited because a lot of times it's very stop and start, hot for a couple of weeks, hot for a month, pulls a hammy, comes back, hot for a couple of weeks, hurts his knee, and it's just like done for the season. It's like the talent was like he was on such a rocket ship at the start of his career, and it's been stop and start for so many years now that for me, while the age is in his favor, it's still like I don't know, like but again, as I said weeks ago, like center field is a wasteland across the sport when it comes to thinking that you're going to get X
two-way players.
Right. Yeah. Two-way players, you know, guys that can hit, guys that can play like asking for that. I said your best bet is to just build from within with that, which is why I was advocating for Carson Bench. But I understand wanting to bring somebody like Robert in. And if we're talking about, you know, the likes of Acuna being a headliner or a big piece of the deal, well, then I think it's a no-brainer because take the shot then because you're not married to the guy because of the contract that he has.
I think the other thing you have to consider with somebody like Luis Robert, you know, yeah, he's been pretty inconsistent the last few years. Like you said, some of the injuries, stops and starts, but it's hard to play for a team that is that bad. It's hard to be motivated to play for a team that you know is going to lose a historic amount of potentially could lose a historic amount of games. It's not easy to be in that clubhouse and to put that uniform on every day for 10 fans at their ballpark. You take a guy out of that situation and put him in one where he has more motivation. Well, okay, things can change, you know, but you do have to take into consideration the injury history. And Carson Bench has a good shot. He's going to compete at spring training. But also Tyrone Taylor's a really good defender. He's a really good defender. I don't see center field as big of an issue as I think some of the fans might see it as. I see left field now as a little bit more of an issue. I do like Jeff in left field, but I don't think he's going to be there full time. They want to move Jeff around more if they keep him. The plan is to keep moving him, utilize all of his, positional flexibility and his abilities. So because he does offer so much, you could play him at first base, second base, anywhere in the outfield. No, he's not an everyday center fielder, but he's a pretty solid outfielder. And if you play him out there a little bit more, his instincts are going to get better because that was the issue last year in center field. I don't think it was his body. I think it was just he was getting used to playing the position and trying to track balls and the instincts that sort of come with the reps of playing the position, the things that Tyrone Taylor does so well, like being able to time those sliding catches like he does or those diving catches. Jeff can do a little bit of that, but you get a ball over his head every once in a while. So if you move him around, he's going to keep getting some of those reps, but you also then utilize him to his full potential. But then you got to have probably a full-time left fielder. I think they can go with Tyrone Taylor and maybe Carson Bench in center field or Jeff in center field. But what's going on in left field right now? Because Jeff's not going to be a full-time left fielder.
Right. I believe in giving folks their flowers. Gab says, I greatly appreciate Abby's realistic and not always analytical perspective. So there you go. I think this is from Armand saying, I'd rather trade for Byron Buxton or Jarren Duran to play center than somebody like Luis Robert. We don't know if either one of those guys truly available. The counterpoint here from Ethan is same deal with Buxton as far as Robert goes. I don't need a guy who spends more time in a wheelchair recovering from whatever injury he has, obviously a little tongue in cheek. But Abby, I'll ask it to you this way. The Mets have, let's say they bring back Pete Alonso. He plays almost every day. Lindor notoriously plays almost every day. Soto plays almost every day. They just added a guy who maybe was more durable than all of them in Marcus Semien before his freak injury, fouling a ball off of his foot. Are the Mets in a position to take a flyer on a player who might be a bit more injured, let's say it's Byron Buxton or Luis Robert or whomever, because they have 4 guys, if they bring back Alonso, who are there all the time. That would seem like you could maybe bank on another player's upside. I mean, you're talking about, is the case with Buxton or Robert, if they're at their best, and with Buxton, if he's healthy, you know he's going to put up massive numbers.
You want Buxton to stay healthy because he's so much fun to watch. You know, it's really unfortunate. A player with that kind of potential has not really been able to fully reach it. I mean, we've seen what he can do, but fully reach it because of the injuries. I think if Pete comes back, yes, they can absolutely take a flyer on somebody like Buxton. But if they're not getting Pete back, then you might need to go for somebody who's a little bit more durable.
I think that's entirely fair. I know you said a couple times that you don't think Jeff McNeil is going to end up traded, or certainly he's not going to be traded for nothing. The Mets are not going to we need to get this guy off the team. But from Darren Rivera, I'll take the second part of this question, whereas if the Mets could package McNeil with a prospect or 2, this is something that I've been in favor of both a player like McNeil and maybe a player like Senga, where the Mets are maybe trying to just change the way their roster is shaped a little bit. You might be able to trade one of those guys with some prospects to a team that would be shedding salary, but still needs to show salary. Like, for instance, could you trade Jeff McNeil and a prospect or 2 to the Pirates for Mitch Keller and take his contract? Could you trade Senga to the Marlins with prospects for Sandy Alcantara, and then they're taking on his money and you're taking back Alcantara? I think if you're going to move McNeil or Senga, I think those are the deals that make the most sense to me. Otherwise, it feels like you're just dumping them to dump them, and that might not be the most prudent thing.
Yeah. And again, I think it's 50-50 that McNeil gets traded and that Senga gets traded, because David Stearns has made it known that he's going to make shrewd moves if he thinks it's going to make the team better. I don't know what the Marlins are doing with Alcantara, because, they kept their pitchers at the trade deadline this year. It's sort of like the White Sox. I guess that's another team. I'll throw them in with the Angels and the White Sox, and that you don't really know the direction that they're going sometimes. So that can be tough when you're trying to acquire a player. So especially one like Alcantara. I think Alcantara would be, I would love to see Alcantara on the Mets. I think that would be a fantastic move for this team. I think, if they can go out and they can trade for Alcantara, and then they can get a guy like Framber Valdez, the rotation's loaded with the young guys. Clay Holmes is going to be better next year. I think that would be a really, really solid rotation if they were able to get 2 guys of that caliber, put them with the young guys. But I don't know what Miami is doing. I don't know whether they are trying to contend or, at least make some noise in the division next year. I just don't know what those 3 teams, it's really tough to figure out what direction they're going in. So I think it's, I'm obviously not on the phone with these GMs like David Stearns is. He's going to know better. The Mets are going to know better about what specific teams are looking for. But when you're dealing with teams like that, it can be tricky.
Yeah.
Because what the Mets want to do. They have laid out their plans. It seems like in Anaheim, on the south side of Chicago, and in Miami, that can change at the drop of a hat, and feels like it changes several times every season with those 3 teams. Yeah. And I covered the Angels for years. I have good things to say about the people that I worked with in the organization, but I don't really know what they're doing at the moment. And so when you're looking into trying to acquire players from teams like that, you could absolutely trade. You could package probably McNeil or Senga with some prospects for Alcantara. I don't know which ones off the top of my head, but you're going to be giving up some pretty good ones for Alcantara. That's for sure. I just don't know what the Marlins want to do.
I don't know. It seems like maybe he's a deadline trade candidate, Sandy Alcantara. It just seems like the Marlins are probably going to hold
season too.
Yeah.
I think that they're a very hard team to get a grasp of. And we've talked about them in terms of needing to spend some money so they don't fall beneath what they're supposed to be spending and facing penalties in that sense. And I'm pretty sure Sandy's the only guy on their roster right now that's actually making legitimate money.
Right.
So shedding that, I think, unless they're taking something back to, your point before, John, if they were getting someone from us that has some money to put on their books as well, I don't know if they're going to move them. And, like I said, it's been very up and down. Like Sandy and Edward Cabrera are available.
Yeah,
then they're not available. And then they're available, and then they're not available. It's just like, make up your mind. Are they available? Or they're not available. But yeah, it's too much back and forth in that sense, which is why I've said before, it's so difficult to get a grasp of what this market is going to be in terms of trades, because we can talk about the Alcantaras and the Cabreras and the Joe Ryans and the Pablo Lopez's and the Freddie Peraltas. Like there's countless guys, and the Mets could trade for any one of them because their farm system's at a spot where they could acquire any one of them. But the question is, are any of them truly available? Which is why the idea of signing someone like a Framber makes a lot of sense. So then once you get that in your back pocket, like the Mets just did by getting Devin Williams in their back pocket, it allows you to go out there and do something else that can better you, overall, and reach your potential of your overall plan, I should say. So that's where I think they're trying to go. We'll see if they can actually accomplish it.
I really like Framber Valdez for this team. I do. I'm on record as saying that before, I think. But I like Framber Valdez for this team.
So it was so much the perfect segue, because that was the last question I wanted to ask you before we let you go. But I did want to bring this up. Mike Laverty and Armand is amazing. Both said, if anything, we'd get prospects back because Keller's contract is booty, talking about Jeff McNeil. And then Armand saying, I like Keller, had a 1.4 WAR. McNeil had a 2 WAR last year. I think based off of that, that's a fair deal. Yeah, I was kind of just rattling things off, but it seems like
that contract,
plus eating the contract 1 for 1 is a fair swap. The reason why I bring it back up, Abby, is because that I could kind of see the situation playing out where the Mets maximize their ceiling by signing Framber Valdez. And then maybe you look at it at that point and say, okay, maybe we can send Jeff McNeil or Senga or whatever to a place like Pittsburgh. We'll take on Mitch Keller. One thing we know about Mitch Keller, he's going to pitch. He's going to give you innings. He's not an ace, but he gives you more reliability than what you would get from Kodai Senga. So I think that kind of, again, 2-part deal like the Mets have been doing all season or all off season makes a lot of sense. But where do you think the Mets stand on Framber Valdez? There seems to be a lot of smoke, and so far where there's been some smoke, there's been a lot of fire with the Mets. Do you think it's realistic? It's likely? What do you think?
I think there's definite interest there. I think that's one that they have more interest in Valdez than some of these other free agent pitchers. And that's the name that I keep hearing come back up. I think there's a definite possibility in a Valdez deal. And again, I really like him for this team. He's got experience. From what I understand, he is a good guy to have in the clubhouse, and he's pretty even keeled, but he knows when to turn it on competitively. So I just think that a guy with that kind of, pedigree and that kind of experience is going to be good for the team. And similar to Marcus Semien, he did win a World Series. He knows what it takes to win. And that's why the Mets liked JD Martinez a few years ago, So when you have some of those guys who have succeeded in the past and they've been on winning teams, they know what it takes to have a winning culture. And they're really good additions for the clubhouse. Even like Martinez, when he was sort of on the downside of his career, that was still a really good addition to the clubhouse and the overall goal of winning games, because they know what it takes.
Speaking of people on winning teams going back there, Miguel Rojas back with the Dodgers on a 1-year deal. We won't spend any time on that because Miguel Rojas has nothing to do with the Mets at all, unlike the Cedric Mullins thing that happened at the start of the show. Abby, do you make anything of it? Sorry, I know I said it was the last question, but now you brought it up. Framber Valdez did seem like he was a very good clubhouse guy, but then he had that situation with his catcher earlier this season where it seemed like maybe he intentionally crossed him up, hit him in the chest. It seemed like he went to the GM meetings to maybe kind of clear the air on that stuff. I know you don't cover the Astros and you weren't in their clubhouse, in their dugout, but is anything that happened in the fallout of that change your perspective on what Framber Valdez is in a major league clubhouse?
That's a good question. I don't know that it's going to change what some of the executives think of him. I don't know that it doesn't change necessarily his value. What he does on the mound is what he does on the mound, and what he does in the clubhouse. The other teams have shown in the past that they're willing to forgive those kinds of things. I mean, look what look what the Mets dealt with for years with, they had lots of clubhouse drama for years. So I don't think it changes his value necessarily. And I think these guys these GMs know their clubhouse culture, and they know whether a guy is going to add to it or not. Jose Siri came to the Mets without the greatest reputation in the clubhouse. And he was injured most of the season, but when he was around the team, he was a good addition. He was a positive addition, at least like in terms of not on the field, but he didn't take away anything negatively from the team or from the atmosphere. Him and Starling Marte were close. He was close with Juan Soto. The three of them were hanging out a lot in spring training, driving around. I think it was Marte would give them rides everywhere. Marte showed them Port St. Lucie and Palm Beach and Jupiter. Marte was driving them around everywhere. So I think that it doesn't change his overall value, and general managers are going to make the calculus of what they can and cannot have in their own clubhouse. They know their clubhouse. They know the vibes, at least they should. And they're going to decide what's best. So I think it's kind of a subjective question. Are there GMs who might say, I have a young catcher, I don't want that? Maybe. I don't, but there's going to be GMs who say, well, he gives us what he's going to give us on the mound. Let's do it.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it'd be this one from Carson. The Mets don't just need an ace. They need a horse. That's what Valdez is. Would I shell out 6 years for a 32-year-old?
Yeah.
Ow. I think that's where it gets a little tricky.
Yeah.
Abby, you gave us more time than you said you would. Thank you so much for that. Ibby, anything we didn't get to with Abby you want to ask her before we go into the break and let her go?
I'm trying to think about anything. Did we miss anybody player-wise, connections? I don't think so. I mean, no. I mean, the only thing I would just say.
I know I put you on the spot. But.
I know. I'm just trying to think real quick. I think we hit on everything that we wanted to hit on. I would echo the same stuff when it comes to Framber and the overall fit. I agree with you, Abby, on that, because this team, as I've said for years, as John has said for years, and Carson's mentioning it in the chat as well, this team needs innings badly. And if there's one pitcher on this market that provides innings, that's Framber Valdez. It's questionable in terms of what he's going to get. I honestly, I don't think he's going to get as many years as people think he's going to get. I think that he wants and probably views himself as better than Max Fried. And I can understand that to an extent. I don't think he's getting that contract. I think he's going to be more so in the 4 to 5 year range with a higher AAV. That's what I think he's going to end up getting.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. I don't know what other teams are thinking, but that's sort of my initial look at him as well.
5,160. There's my guess. 5,160.
Well, Abby, and if you're the Mets, just again, like with Diaz, flex the muscle and do the deal for money. If you can convince him to take a 4-year deal because it's a quote unquote overpay in terms of annual value, then do that. I know a lot of these players, especially guys who are going into their last big contract, want the security, but there's nothing, 4 years at over $30 million a year is nothing to sneeze at. So I think if you're the Mets, flex that financial muscle a little bit. Abby, thank you so much for giving us over an hour of your time, nearly an hour and a half. This was amazing having you on. I'm sure folks follow your work over at the New York Daily News, but in case they want to follow you on Twitter, if they don't already, where can they find you and all that fun stuff?
At Abbey Mastracco. I mean, my first and last name. I know my name is a little complicated. My parents named me after a Beatles album, thinking it was really cool, and nobody spelled my first name right since. And you can't do that with a complicated Italian last name. Tell my parents
They've made it doubly complicated, because I'm also Italian. I have an Italian last name, but I had to double check yours each time. I was like, wait, how many R's, how many C's?
The 2 C's throw people off, and the E in my first name, Abby like the road, which now that I think about it, would have been a much better Twitter handle than just Abbey Mastracco.
You might be able to change it when you get out here. You can
change that.
Try to change it really good.
I should change that. How am I just now thinking of this?
That's what we do here until Mets Do Us Part. We're really just a think tank. We're an idea machine. No, thank you so much for doing the show. We really appreciate you being here. Have a safe trip. Have a fun trip.
Safe travels,
as fun as it can be. Stay away from quarter zips and tech pants. And mock turtlenecks, mock trades, not mock turtlenecks. That should be the rally cry for for the winter meetings. Guys, that is Abbey Mastracco, covers the Mets for the
Thank
New
you,
York
Abby.
Daily News. Hopefully we'll have you on again at some point. Thank you very much. We'll head into the break. When we get back, it'll be just me and Ibby. We'll wrap up the show. But thank you again to Abbey Mastracco. You're watching Til Mets Do Us Part live on YouTube, live on Twitter. We will be right back. Yo, just like that, we are back with Til Mets Do Us Part live on Twitter, live on YouTube, and I missed heading into the break live on Substack as well. All the usual places where you can find myself and my co-host, John Saponaro, Matt Ibanez, back with you after almost an hour and a half with Abbey Mastracco of the New York Daily News. Great stuff, Ibby, as we head into the winter meetings as fans and as podcasters, and she heads into the winter meetings quite literally. She's getting ready to get on a plane in a couple days and fly down to be there. I think the one thing that we could talk about right after we hit him with a quick word is I think the Mets are going to be active because and the Mets have already been active. The Mets have been firing a lot of these opening salvos as far as free agency and the offseason is concerned. But when it's so difficult to forecast trades, like we always say, because even for somebody like Abby, who covers the team on a daily basis, she's not in the front office. It's so difficult to say, hey, this is what this team is really looking for. This deal can get done, whatever. But we know the Mets are looking in the trade avenue. We know that they're going to be active there. And I think that means they'll be active at the winter meetings. And again, you're going to have some player movement on the free agency front as well. But before we get back into that, let's hit them with a quick word from our friends over at Independent Safes.
Absolutely, John. IndependentSafes.com. Independent Safes are protecting homes and businesses with secure residential and commercial safes. Fireproof peace of mind in every corner. Visit IndependentSafes.com today for security that stands strong. And we know the follow-up of things that need to be said. Someone's got to go in the safe.
It's a safe space now, Ibby. We no longer have a beat reporter on the show. So if you want to go where I think you're going to go with this one, it's a safe space.
Well, look, I like being professional, and I feel as though you should be professional when you have people on. But now that it is back to, the two-man setup, I do think it is appropriate to put Mike Puma and that article in general into the safe this week because, again, I wasn't lying when I said to Abby that when she was in here, like my thought on it was it felt very gossipy. It didn't feel very much anything rooted in context. It just felt like it was grasping at straws. And I didn't appreciate it. I thought it was just I'm not going to call it a hit piece, but I felt like it was a Friday news dump that nobody could read because you got to pay to read. And I ain't paying to read it. And I just waited for the screenshots that came out and I read those and I saw, I'm like, this isn't news. This is gossip. This is a rag. Everything. And of course, people want to run with it. And you saw people bashing Lindor and going and defending McNeil and all these things. It created a narrative that did not need to happen post Thanksgiving. It was very stupid. It was misplaced. And as I tweeted out, I thought it was, catering to the lowest common denominator of people. And I felt that it was done not in good faith. So for that, Mike Puma, besides the lock that I put out there in my AI slop, as everyone likes to put out there, for the tweet that I put out there, I felt that, there could be a lock on the Mets clubhouse for him and saying no Pumas allowed because I thought it was garbage. And I thought there was a better way to cover it. And that's why I mentioned Disha's article because I thought that was fantastic. And it was rooted in actual quotes and getting things and an actual vibe of the clubhouse, not talking about the difference between one guy liking fashion and the other guy not. That's garbage. You're in the safe. The keys tossed away and it's going in the river. Bye, Puma.
Carlos Ortiz is with you. Put Mike Puma in the safe. Carson, 4XL safe for Puma.
Panic
we
room.
All know why.
We got to chip in for the panic room, guys.
We got
panic
it all.
Super chat us.
Chats. Yeah, the super
we'll
chats.
Get the panic room. Put them in it.
We'll fund the panic room. This is a good one from Carson. The best part was Lindor posting family photos all over Instagram while New York is chucking hit pieces at him left and right. It's very, very fair, very fair comment. Oh, how unfair they were. It's a very fair comment. Call a poacher for Puma from Ethan.
Let's go, Ethan.
You know, Odd Villain saying Mike Puma better not be at the QBC because he might not leave. It's on site for Mike Puma. Ibby,
wait, does that mean Odd? Are you going to the QBC? Is that?
I've been talking with Odd a bit. I think Odd might try to be at the QBC. So
ooh, that'd be fun.
Yeah,
finally meet.
Don't want to put words in his mouth, but yeah. Gab saying Ibby going in the safe. Why?
You know what? I'm going in the safe because this is my public apology that I promised. I'm going in the safe via
What is
Gab.
it with us and having to publicly apologize to Gab on this show?
She was upset because when I was mentioning people that we can trust when it comes to articles and things of that nature, I mentioned Jeff Passan. I mentioned Will Salmon. She was upset because I did not mention her, and she's someone that's in the show, or on the show, I should say, or in the chat. We're trying to get on the show. I should be more respectful in that sense. So I apologize, Gab. I will gladly go in the safe. Please don't throw away the key because I like doing this show. But that is my apology to you. So I am sorry.
Fair enough. I am going to, she says, yay.
Good.
And
No.
then no, I think no is for throwing away the key. Oh, no. You said favorites.
I did. If I did, I apologize. And I apologize yet again because that's not what I meant. I meant in terms of like the breaking news aspect. I did not mean to say favorites. Otherwise, I would have thrown your name in there. So I apologize.
Hey, everybody out there. This next song goes out to a woman named Gab. Matt wants to let you know that he's sorry for wronging you and saying that you're not a member of his favorites, but he hopes that this song will make you feel just a bit better.
Listen to Light FM here.
I don't know. That's what it feels like. Listen, I have nothing to add with regards to Mike Puma going in the safe. He is my pick to also go in the safe. I know it's a less interesting take to put him in the safe, but in addition to you, but it has to be him. It is. Listen, anytime you write a headline like that and you put it behind a paywall, I think we know what's happening. And look, I said what I said to Abby when I asked her, to give her opinion and not her opinion on another writer's reporting. We've done that with Will Salmon, as he's been on the show. We've done that with Manny Gomez and other writers who've been on the show where it's like, hey, we want you to talk about the story, but we don't want you to critique another writer. That's fair. Right. You and I are not beat writers. We don't work for rival publications. I can say I didn't like that. I think when you write a headline like that and you hide it behind a paywall, we all know what you're doing. That's it. We all know what you're doing. You're trying to get people to sign up for, the post during a downtime. And that's...
Or a Black Friday sale. That's their...
Or Black Friday sale. And listen, shout out Dexter Henry. I've been on Straight Outta Flushing.
Love Dexter.
And I know you've been on there. And that's part of the New York Post live stream. I get that. So no hate there, but we know what you're doing, man. And I know everybody's got to sell shows and everybody's got to sell papers. But I just wish there was a little bit more authenticity and a little bit less, Stephen A. Skip Baylessing, along the way. So looks like Pagan is going back to the Reds, 2 years, $20 million. Stevie Mac with
Emilio?
Yeah. Okay. Till ASMR do us part because of my my little bit right there. Odd Villain, Mike Puma to Rikers. Darren Rivera saying, John, was that your Casey Kasem impression? Not necessarily, but I guess Casey Kasem had such a distinct particular voice. It was just really like a, we're taking request line radio throwback. But anyway, that's throw away the key. Look, Odd Villain saying, damn, I liked Pagan. Ibby, this goes back to what we were saying before, though, with the Mets being covered with regards to signing Devin Williams, because a lot of these guys going off the board, boom, 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 boom. And if they don't sign Devin Williams, look, Devin Williams goes somewhere else. Pagan goes somewhere else. Now what? What are you doing? Who Pete Fairbanks is your closer? I like Pete Fairbanks. I think Suarez is a good back end arm, but then you just have one of those guys. I think the Mets need two, and I think they should go out and just do the thing and pair Diaz with Devin Williams and a returning AJ Minter and Brooks Raley. And Ibby, then you can start to do the thing that Stearns is really good at, which is finding relievers nobody's ever heard of and, rolling the dice and having that shuttle back and forth between Syracuse and Flushing. You can do that when the back end of your bullpen is Edwin Diaz, Devin Williams, AJ Minter, Brooks Raley, Dylan Ross will probably be in the mix. A lot of the other names we know aren't going to be because it seems like everybody else has had Tommy John surgery. But you sign Edwin Diaz, you check off all the boxes, then you can play around. Then you can get better on the margins and you can, do your thing that the analytical department is so good at. So I think it's a no-brainer, man. I understand it's a complicated situation because it takes two to tango and you don't know where the Blue Jays are going to land. But man, I just think just get it done. And it seems like the market is moving where we might have an answer maybe even before the winter meetings.
Yeah, I think that I feel that the market for relievers is moving quickly. And I wouldn't be shocked if we have a Diaz resolution, whether he stays or he goes within the next, I don't know if it's going to happen at the meetings. Obviously, we all want stuff to happen at the meetings because it makes it more exciting, even though a lot of times it just ends up being a jumping off point, a further jumping off point to try and get things done a little bit later in the off season. But I do think that this is going to move fast. And if not by the end of next week, maybe the beginning of the following, I think there's resolution when it comes to Diaz. I thought it would have happened by now, but it's kind of dragged a little bit, but it's starting to pick back up again. And it makes too much sense. It really does. If the Mets are willing to go 3, and he wants 5, you can meet in the middle on 4. You can throw in a team option for a 5th, maybe. There are ways that you can bridge this gap and get to where you need to be, because I think we all realize that Edwin Diaz is meant to be here. It makes too much sense in the overall scheme and plan of what you're trying to accomplish. Keep him in the building.
I completely agree. I completely agree with everything you're saying. And look, there's you've got Aunt Rivera, shout out Subway to Shea, Edwin Diaz and Tyler Rogers, and we're good. Carson saying Michael Kopech, Hunter Harvey, Jason Foley have at it. After there's plenty to pick from after 39 gets done. I'll even add, I don't think he's signed anywhere yet. Kyle Finnegan is another guy who may be ticketed to go back to Detroit, had a good time there, but you never know. There are people that you can get in that kind of $8 million range, maybe on a 1-year deal. And, you can go and you can do maybe a 2-year deal for a guy like Tyler Rogers, who's already been in the building. Like, there's a lot that you can do once you lock up Diaz. And I think that's what the Mets should be focused on. They have a lot to focus on, but I think that should be the move because I think that market is going to continue to move quickly. Not that anyone super cares, but Armand said from before, per Rosenthal, Cedric Mullins is getting 7 years on that $1 million, that 1-year deal. Ibby, there's a lot of talk here about Framber Valdez in the comments. So I just want to bring up some stuff that came in before we went to break. Joshua says, yeah, that's my problem. The contract for Valdez looks pretty yikes. I think you can maybe mitigate some of that. Odd Villain says, I don't give a fuck if Framber hit his catcher. I don't even know that catcher's name. He's probably selling car parts now. Saying Senga is a Yorkie, Framber's a fucking Rottweiler. Mets have too much poodle, not enough pit bull. Gab then said, Mets need that dog mentality. I mean,
true. They do.
It's all true. It's all true. And look, at the beginning of the offseason, I didn't put a lot of stake in Framber Valdez. Not because he's not good. He's very good. Not because the Mets can't use him or don't need him. The Mets can use him and do need him. I just think it's odd for the Mets to invest $30 million a year over any length of time, knowing that Tarek Skubal is a free agent next year and is going to require a $400 million contract and is the perfect fit for this team. And that being said, you also can't wait a year to get an ace. The Mets need an ace today. So do I think the Mets and David Stearns would prefer to trade for Freddie Peralta? I do. Do I think they'd prefer to even trade for Sandy Alcantara? knowing that, yeah, he's got a couple more years on that deal, but he is cost controlled. You know what that deal is. Neither one of those precludes you from going and getting Skubal, which I think would be their ideal scenario. The biggest thing for me is the length of contract for Framber, like a lot of people have pointed out, considering his age. And if you sign Framber, does that take you out of Skubal? And I don't know that you want to take yourself out of Skubal. I agree, Truman. You can't punt 2 years in a row. I don't think the Mets had the intention of punting this past year, but it turned into a year where they didn't do much of anything. So you can't say we can't bring the same team back. We have to shake up the core. We have to focus on run prevention. We need an ace. We need innings, and then not go do any of that. So I do agree with that point. So I do think the Mets are probably going to do that. But I think it does complicate things. A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. You don't know what's going to happen with Skubal, but I think it is a little complicated.
It's a tough spot. And I still question how much money Tarek Skubal's actually going to get. Now, if he goes into a free agent year winning back-to-back Cy Youngs, it's going to be extremely fascinating with Boris as your client, or with Boris as your agent.
With a 4. Starts with a 4. 400.
And, I mean, you could say that because Dylan Cease just got 210, like we talked about last week. Are we look? David Stearns was willing to go to 325 to get Yamamoto at 25 years old. Would he be willing to go to 400 on a 30-year-old pitcher? I still think it's very interesting and one thing to look out for, which is why I still think that acting now would not shock me if they did. Look, it matters. Term always matters. I don't think this team is going to give Framber Valdez the reported $200+ million. Put out my guess where I said 5 years, 160. I say that because that's $32 million a year. That is $1 million more per year than what Max Fried got. So that's kind of where I'm trying to get him where he wants, giving you the more AAV with the less term. I think that could make sense because then you can use the capital that you have to bring in another pitcher, which is where you could then say, I want to trade Kodai Senga, and then I can trade elsewhere and use this capital to bring in. Could be Freddie Peralta, could be Pablo Lopez, could be whatever. And now you're cooking with something with a much better staff. I don't know if this team can push the idea or the narrative of waiting for Skubal. I know everyone wants him. There's no guarantee that he's going to be here. And I still wonder if David Stearns would give a 30-year-old pitcher for 10+ years, $400 million. I question who would do $400 million for a pitcher.
I will say this, because the reason why I'm bringing this up is not to wait. It's just the food for thought, because on this show, I've always been steadfast. You don't wait. You can't just be like, well, that guy's a free agent, because the best laid plans, right? We thought the Mets would have loved, and they probably would have loved to sign Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to pair with Juan Soto for the next decade. Well, guess what? Vladimir Guerrero Jr. never made it to free agency. They couldn't do it. We talked to Manny Gomez when he still covered the Mets for the New Jersey Advance last year. He said he thinks that they, in a dream world, had, Big Papi and Manny Ramirez vibes with Juan Soto and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. It never happened. So you can't just wait. Do I think that suddenly the Tigers are going to have a come to Jesus moment and extend Tarek Skubal? I don't, but you can't rule it out. So I don't think that you can wait. My point is not saying that the Mets should wait. It's another complicated wrinkle in their thought process. But having said that, there are a lot of good points here. Gab says Cohen will make it up in casino revenue. They'll be in on Skubal next year regardless. I do think the casino thing getting approved is part of this. It's going to generate a metric fuck ton of money, whether you're in favor of the casino or not. It will. And so that's only good as far as Cohen's pocket and the Mets payroll is concerned. Carson says 2027 pending lockout brings the urgency to trade for a starter. Don't potentially waste 2 years of Lindor and Soto because the asking price for the league's indisputable number one starting pitcher. That's also fair, whether you're acquiring any kind of starting pitcher. I know he's talking about Skubal, but I'll say you can't afford to use Truman's term, punt a year going into a potential lockout if Framber Valdez is sitting right there. Joe DeMeo, shout out Joe, really good point here. David Peterson is in a walk year. Clay Holmes can opt out. Senga might be gone now. Minaya would be entering his final year. Even if they sign Valdez, they could still sign Skubal. I think that's also a really, really good point. That would be a lot of money invested into 2 starting pitchers. But with all of the young starting pitching the Mets have, they might just be able to stomach that. That's not a crazy concept when you put it all together. It's a lot of really good points, but I like Joe DeMayo laying out the state of their rotation and the financial commitments therein.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, all of this and how these pieces get put together is going to be very, very telling. And I think what Carson said before also is where my mind is at the moment when it comes to, the amount that they spend. If they do keep Diaz, it's going to kind of tilt their hand in a certain direction in terms of how they acquire the rest of said needs, not because
That's what
they
Carson
need,
said too.
Yeah, not because they need to do anything in terms of like monitoring money. We know they don't have to, but look, there's still numbers that they probably want to stay within. And it's not always being penalized and stuff like that. But that's going to be like the Diaz decision, and what that number is could show your hand a little bit. I did put something into the comments at the very start of the show that I wanted to bring up real quick, because it's a Twitter account that I follow that I think is respectable. And they changed their name recently. They were Cardinals Live on Twitter, where they covered a lot of stuff when it came to the Cardinals, and a lot of the information that they would put out there was very much on par. They were early.
I believe you've mentioned them once before, maybe last offseason, and they were right on some stuff.
They bring some stuff up, and they've been right or early on times, but end up being right in the end when it comes to Cardinals news. But he's been venturing out. I'm assuming he, she, whoever it is, I don't know exactly who the person is, been venturing out more in overall news with all teams. Maybe he's trying to get into the said field and put a face to his account or whatever. But I thought it was interesting how he's been fishing a little bit more when it comes to the Twins, a little bit more when it comes to the Astros and this free agent period. And he just said before, and I'll read the tweet verbatim because I thought it was interesting, talking about the Mets. And he mentioned how they were in on Framber Valdez, and it reads like this: Mets and Valdez have discussed a deal. They are the favorites to land the starting pitcher. Now, this isn't an account that just throws things out there to just throw stuff at the wall. Like, usually they have some sort of information before they say things. So it's interesting because we were just talking about it. It's interesting because we're curious about term and what could these talks potentially lead to. Like I said, I think that they would like to stay under like 100, and I think 160 is the number. That's where I think that they're willing to go. I'm saying 5 years. He's 32 years old, takes him to 37. He's not an overpowering guy, doesn't rely on speed, off-speed type of pitcher, a little bit softer, stuff that dives away. Could be a contract that's not a nightmare because his stuff will still be there as he ages.
It's fair.
He doesn't, live off of the velocity. So, and like I said, he provides a lot of stuff that this team needs in terms of innings, in terms of moxie, in terms of doing it before in big spots. I will say this though about Framber. The last 2 years have been very curious, mainly because you look back to last year, god-awful first half, untouchable the second half of the season, untouchable. Comes into this year, incredible first half, untouchable. Second half of the season, god-awful.
Didn't the Astros
ERA.
Didn't the Astros win like 15 of his starts in a row?
Yes,
something crazy.
That was on fire.
And he personally had like 10 wins in that stretch. Like, he was factoring in decisions because he was going like 6 innings, 7 innings, 8 innings, complete game, and they were just going off. So yeah, look, it's
curious. It really is.
It is, but Ibby, you're in a little bit of hot water here. Gab saying, "Oh, you can trust them, Ibby."
Oh my God.
So
no matter what I say, I'm not gonna. I'm sorry.
Listen, at least I mean, you're getting a little bit of flack, but nobody's catching flack like I'm catching flack from Lazy Mary. But I see it, Lazy, and I'll bring up comments the minute you say something funny enough to bring up onto the screen. I'll post it.
Ooh.
Just saying. It's a lot of work for not a lot of results. I'll just put it that way. Nick DeLuca saying Cohen's casino will generate 3 times Hal Steinbrenner's net worth annually. I love it here. And Ethan just saying Hal Steinbrenner poor. Mike Laverty, parking spots have apparently doubled with this new casino plan. I guess, yeah, it would open up kind of like a complex kind of thing where, you can park anywhere and be able to go to the games. Look, I don't want to turn this into, Til Casino Do Us part, but Ibby, I wish there was a way to invest. Look, not that there is a way. I wish that Cohen would have invested in the infrastructure of the area surrounding Citi Field that didn't involve a casino, but I'm not naive enough to sit here and say that, a billionaire capitalist is not going to put a casino somewhere. It's basically a license to print money. So I wish they would have invested in that infrastructure in a different way, but just from a Mets fan perspective, again, more money for Cohen means more money to the Mets. So, I know Keith is saying, the media goon, don't get me started on the casino. I don't think casinos are a good idea, but it's going to help. It will help the Mets in a roundabout way. I think it's bad for the community. I think it's bad for Mets fans ultimately, but I think it's going to help. I think it's going to help the Mets revenue for sure.
I mean, I saw the numbers that were posted before, and I'm not trying to make you upset, Keith, but I know that they said that. Now, whether these numbers are proper or not, I don't know, but they were saying how the New York State Gaming Commission predicting that the property will generate $3.9 billion in annual revenue. Cohen's 50-acre complex would instantly be one of the top 10 largest U.S. casinos by revenue, which is, again, look, God bless. Do what you got to do. Make your money. You have your visions of everything. Want to make this a year-round, exciting place to be, giving Mets fans something to look at other than the chop shops. And look, this whole area is getting built up big time between the New York Football Club with all that's going on with that and this whole entire project. Look, gonna be a lot of traffic. Going to cost you a lot to get to the games, especially when it comes to parking. But is what it is. I don't have a horse in the race when it comes to this type of stuff. I'm not a big gambler, so the only thing I wanted was just a simple bar to go to before a game. That was just like a fun area to go. That's all I really wanted, but. This is something, that's for sure.
Last thing I'll say on this, just bringing up a couple things. Gab saying there is more coming with Metropolitan Park, music venues, fields, outdoor seating, restaurants, etc. Look, that part of it is great. I don't know if you've ever been to Foxborough where the Patriots play, but Patriot Place is kind of like that. They're not the only place. They're the one that jumps out to mind immediately. The couple times that I worked at Gillette Stadium, Foxborough is in the middle of nowhere. It's outside of Boston. It might as well be in Rhode Island. You get to Patriot Place though, and you have everything you need. You have restaurants, you have music venues, you have movie theaters. The hotel that we stayed at is on the property, and then you can just go to Gillette Stadium. It's very easy, and I'm sure that that's what this is going to be ultimately. I just wish a casino didn't come with it. Other people disagree. Joshua says, I don't mind casinos. I mind the constant advertisements and complete overtaking of sports betting in sports. But I think if you mind one, they kind of go hand in hand. Douglas Barnes saying, I don't care. I want a dynasty. Get your money, Cohen, and buy me some championships. I do kind of agree with that. Get your money and buy championships. Look, the one thing that we could say from a Mets perspective is, Ibby, when Cohen doesn't mind investing his personal money into the Mets, even if he takes a loss doing it. And so he has invested personal money before. If he has more money, he'll invest more money as long as they don't have a salary cap after, the oncoming work stoppage. Lazy Mary saying, John, grow up. It's something that's going to be amazing for the area. Will create a lot of jobs as well. You goon will undoubtedly help that area out. John would rather the chop shops. I'll just say this. Obviously, any kind of infrastructure is going to be better than the chop shops. That's a positive.
Oh
It
my
will
God,
create
Lazy.
some jobs, but just go read the economic reports of what casinos do to the area around them and how good they are as far as the community goes. And you'll be surprised. Keith saying, no, Lazy Mary, I'm the goon. The media goon has spoken. Look, move on from that. I don't want to talk more about the casino. Ibby, this is, I think, a good point from Darren saying Abbey was great, although I don't agree with McNeil in left field. That would be a downgrade from Nimmo. I didn't want to get into it because we spent a lot of time with Abbey and I didn't want to keep her longer, even longer still. But I will say, I think it's a greater than 50% chance that Jeff McNeil gets traded, not just off of the Mike Puma article, but I just think he has become a square peg round hole. I think he is a movable contract on a 1-year deal. I understand his versatility, but you and I have spoken about his versatility being a little overblown. It's kind of faux versatility. He can play places. It doesn't mean that he should at this stage in his career. So I do think that there's a lot of smoke around Jeff McNeil being moved because I think he probably will be moved. I do.
According to Jeff Passan's article, he was the 25th ranked person that they were speaking on, which I think put him as the least liked of all of the options that are available. But he was also at the highest when it came to probability of being traded, and that was at 80%. So Passan saying it's at 80% that Jeff McNeil is dealt away. And I'll say this, that I think the idea would be for them to get rid of Jeff McNeil, but I also think that they are shopping Acuna as well. And I think whichever one is moved, the other one is staying, because I think they want to have someone that can move around in some aspect, whether it's on the infield or in Jeff, it's the infield and the outfield. I think they're going to want to have someone like that on the roster, unless they're prepared to do that with Jet and replacing Acuna then. In that case, if they wanted to move both of them, depending on what deals come about. But yeah, I just think that I think it makes most sense for Jeff to be off the team, not because of the nonsense that was written, but because I'm just going to echo what I've been saying. It's time. Like, it's time to get some new faces, some new blood. And this isn't just change for change. This is change because this guy's been here for a long time, and the skills are deteriorating too. I know a lot of people say, like, you don't just change to change. It's like, well, I agree with that to an extent, but with Jeff, I just think it's like, I feel like we have squeezed everything from that orange. Like, all the juice is out. Like, there's nothing left here. We know what it is. It's time to get something different.
Yeah, Joe DeMeo also bringing up a good point, saying you can sign a utility guy for a couple $1 million if you got it. I think so, because True Mets Talk saying trade them both. I disagree, Ibby, in that if there's a deal out there for both guys that make separate deals for Acuna and Jeff that make the Mets better, I don't think the Mets are going to keep one because they traded the other. Just a hypothetical.
Well, of course, yeah, you could get blown away, yeah.
Look, if the Mets can trade Acuna with a better prospect and get Luis Robert Jr., and the Mets could trade Jeff McNeil straight up for Mitch Keller, I think they make both of those deals. You know what I mean? Like, if they're, I know Keller it's complicated because he's got $55 million left in salary. I'm just saying, if the Mets could make two moves that I think would make them better, my personal opinion, Luis Robert and Mitch Keller would both make the Mets better today.
Agreed.
I would make both of those moves and then worry about who my utility player is, whether it's Jet Williams or, somebody that I have to pay a couple $1 million to, like Joe DeMeo just said.
I feel that maybe my thought process is coming from a place of, I feel like if you're lucky enough to move one, I don't think the other one's getting moved too. Because you got lucky enough to move the one, I don't think you're going to be able to move the other. Look, I'm not always right. I've been wrong plenty, so we'll see how it goes. But I think that's kind of where I was coming from with that one.
I don't know how much, but Douglas Barnes saying Acuna is building some trade value in the Winter League. I don't know how much value, but he's certainly not hurting his case, Ibby.
I don't think he's hurting himself, but at the same time, it's like, this guy wasn't able to hit the ball of the fence at all. What is that saying about the league that he's playing in right now?
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, like, it could go both ways in that way. It can go both ways in that sense.
look, we got a couple minutes left before we get to the 2-hour threshold, and that's usually where we like to stay and get off of the show. But Ibby, this will be our last show before the winter meetings start. The plan, as it sits right now, is to do our regularly scheduled show a week from today on Wednesday in the middle of the winter meetings. That probably will not change unless maybe the Mets do something massive where we might have to react, even just like a short version of the show, just reacting to that 15 minutes, and then we do our regularly scheduled show. I don't know. But the Mets are linked to enough people of significance where we might need to do something that amends that. But if we don't, heading into the winter meetings where there should be a flurry of action around the league and for the Mets specifically, what do you think is going to happen between this Wednesday and next Wednesday? Do you think the Mets have a first baseman? Do you think they have the closing position locked up? Do you think they have a deal with Framber Valdez? Do you think they get an outfield? Like, what do you think is going to happen or nothing between now and when we record again, which is the middle of the winter meetings?
I feel like there's still a feeling out process going with a lot of these markets. So I don't know if anything is going to happen by Wednesday, specifically with the Mets. I don't know. Like, things can happen. I think I would love like a huge trade to happen, but I don't know unless those things were established already and parameters were set at the GM meetings, but we didn't really get that sense with Will when we had him on, like something like that was going on. So I feel that it's not first base. It's not Pete Alonso. I don't think that's happening.
No,
I don't think that's happening. I don't think that the Mets are making a trade either to bring in someone to shut them out on Pete this quickly either. I don't think that's the case either. I do feel that Diaz can happen, but I don't know if it's going to happen by Wednesday. I want to say that there's a little bit of smoke when it comes to this Framber stuff. Maybe. Again, term's going to matter here. I don't think it's the money. It's the term. So I will say this. By the time we record next show, I think that the Mets will have somehow acquired a pitcher. I'll just say a pitcher. I'm not going to say which level of pitcher or like.
Will you say relief pitcher or starting pitcher?
I
or
will
just
say starting
a
pitcher.
Single pitcher.
I will say starting pitcher. I will.
Okay.
I'll say starting pitcher.
Well, first of all, Lazy Mary wants you to do all the breaking news shows by yourself. So you can work that out with them.
Come on.
I would, if I had to rank things, I would say the most likely thing that we will know by the next time we record is whether or not Edwin Diaz is a Met. I think that's the most likely thing. I think the next most likely thing is what you just said, a deal for a starting pitcher. So I don't know that I'm not saying Edwin Diaz is going to be a Met by next Wednesday. I just think we will know whether or not he is a Met by next Wednesday. I think the thing you alluded to, which is some form of a starting pitcher, whether that's a deal with Framber Valdez, whether that's a trade that, we can speculate on, but may not see coming, whether it's, Freddie Peralta or Joe Ryan or Pablo Lopez, take your pick of pitchers the Mets have been linked to. I think there's a good chance that maybe happens. But then I think the least likely scenario is Pete Alonso and anything having to do with first base. I would even put acquiring an outfielder above Pete Alonso. I think there's a chance the Mets sign Cody Bellinger. I think there's a chance the Mets trade for Luis Robert. I think all of that is more likely to happen before we have any clarity with Pete Alonso. Unfortunately, I think it's maybe not drag out as long as it did last year, but maybe I think that's the one that's going to drag on and on and on and on and on and on and on.
Unless he comes to the realization that it's going to be that and says, I don't want to do this. Let's figure this out right now. Let's go 3 years, fourth year option. Like, I think it's going to be a long wait for him again. And I'm curious on how long the Mets are actually willing to wait before they do something, like I said before, that they wouldn't, which is do a move where they set themselves up to protect themselves. I think the second they do that at first base, that's going to be their first baseman. I don't think they're circling back in that sense.
Unless, what if it's this? I just talked myself into a scenario. What if there's a thing that adds a bat that doesn't block them from Pete Alonso? Like if they made a trade with St. Louis for Contreras, a better defender.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Like something that you say, okay, Contreras plays 75% of the time at first base, but Alonso can factor in there. You could DH Contreras too. You know what you're getting financially. He's obviously not a Pete Alonso replacement because he's not the same kind of hitter, but he would be a nice Pete Alonso addition. Like he would be a nice second guy to have with Alonso. I think maybe you could see something like that happening. Because I do agree with you. I don't think they're going to make a move that blocks them from an Alonso reunion. I also don't know. I guess the only move that would block them from an Alonso reunion at this point is probably Kyle Schwarber. Like Josh
which I don't think is happening.
Which I don't think is happening either. But, you know, as I'm just thinking out loud, like if they sign Kyle Schwarber, he's your everyday DH. That's it. You're not signing Pete Alonso too.
Right.
So, and I also, just because Ibby, they can't be so left-handed, right? So they're not going to sign Kyle Schwarber and Cody Bellinger either, right? Like, because then you're too left-handed. So I think as much as people love Kyle Schwarber, and I get why you do, the guy's a fucking monster offensively, I don't think he fits the Mets in a myriad of ways. If he was right-handed, maybe, but also if you want that, just sign Pete Alonso. So, but I do think that maybe a move for a guy like Contreras could maybe happen. There just seems to be like St. Louis is selling everything that's not nailed down. So
yeah,
maybe that's a thing that could happen. Gab, before you answer, Gab says, how did we get through a whole pod without any blunt thoughts? That's fair. You know, I don't know. I don't know how we
This horse is dead. This horse is beyond dead.
It's not. It's so much fun. It's such he's such a fun person to troll because he's just so impossible. Just so impossible. Yes, but Corey saying Schwarber limits the roster. He really does. He really does. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if maybe there's a move out there for let's put it this way. It's an impossible question to answer, but like there might be a move, man, out of nowhere. There might be a Contreras deal. There might be a Mitch Keller deal. There might be a
Steven Kwan. Who knows?
Steven Kwan. Like there might be something that we're speculating on that happens. And listen, nobody saw Marcus Semien happening. So I don't know.
No, came out of left field. No pun.
Yeah. Chris Scopo, former guest on the show.
Hey, Chris.
Very funny comedian saying, I think they're going to go after Duran, which I would rather. Belly scares me with the up and down seasons. You know, man, Duran would be a great fit, but there was reports that the Red Sox are valuing him as the 7-WAR player that he was and not the 4-WAR player he was last year. And again, that's going to make a deal impossible.
I don't know. I don't know how the Mets and the Red Sox match in terms of the Mets acquiring one of their outfielders like Durant or Abreu, which were both mentioned in Passan's article as well. And I believe the Mets were mentioned in both as potential destinations. I don't know what the fit is there. Like it's not Senga. Like they can use either one of those players as the centerpiece to get something bigger. Like if the Royals are really moving.
Oh, damn.
Cole Reagans, then they could use Durant. If the Reds were really using or trying to get more offense and they don't want to pay Schwarber and they're willing to move Hunter Green, which I think is ridiculous. But if they are, like the Red Sox match there, like I just don't see where the Mets and the Red Sox match. I don't know if they're going to be trying to just acquire more prospects. I don't see the Mets giving them anything from the Major League roster. And I don't think Senga matches what they want in terms of the pitcher that they're trying to attain. So I don't see the match. I don't.
I think this is a great point from Joe. Sums it up. Duran is the perfect fit for the Mets. The Mets aren't the perfect trade partner for the Red Sox.
Yeah.
That's going to be a problem. Because you have to match up. Mario saying, what about a thought of if Alonso doesn't sign, you sign Bregman and Bellinger and trade for Kwan? There's too much. They're not going to do all that.
That's a
It's
lot
too much.
going on. That's
They
way too
won't
much.
do that. If Alonso signs somewhere else, could I see the Mets getting creative? Could I see the Mets signing Bellinger if Alonso doesn't sign? Yes. Could I see the Mets getting creative and, seeing what Beatty could do at first base and signing Bregman? Sure. I don't see them doing both or all three of those things. It's simply too many things.
No, I don't think it's happening.
No. Look, Ibby, this was a really good show. A lot of great stuff with Abbey Mastracco in the first half of the New York Daily News. A lot of, just us doing what we do here in the second half, kind of putting a bow on everything. I'm excited for the winter meetings. I'm excited for the Queens Baseball Convention, which is next weekend.
Yes.
It's not this coming weekend, but the following. I'll be back in New York, much to the chagrin of Lazy Mary, I'm sure. I'll be there at the Queens
What if
Baseball
Mary
Convention.
shows up? You going to fight him if he shows up?
I'm not fighting anybody, dude. I'm not fighting any. Remember, there's a dude who wanted to fight me last year at the Queens Baseball Convention. He's
I'm
9'3".
I'm aware.
And he said he was going to be there. He found my personal number on the internet. It was actually pretty creepy stuff, but then he didn't show up, so it was all all moot. Joe DeMayo saying, "I'll see you guys at the QBC."
I'm booking you right now, Joe.
The question is, if I'm booked, do you want to just put it on the books right now?
Let's get Joe DeMayo right now. Joe DeMayo is on with us live at the QBC.
Joe DeMayo will be on with Til Mets Do Us part at the Queens Baseball Convention. I think that's the best way to do it. I really do. So Joe's probably going to say something in the comments now of he'll have to think about it.
I'll see if it works with my schedule, guys.
See if it works with my schedule. You're going to be in the same damn room, Joe.
I don't know.
No, I think that would be a really good fit, especially if there are rumors of, or if the Mets do anything with regards to trading prospects. Obviously, that's, Joe does a great job covering the Mets full stop, but, that's his bread and butter. And there's nobody I trust more covering the Mets prospects than Joe DeMayo. Keith had previously banned Joe DeMayo, but
he's back.
Ibby, well, listen, much like WWE, which I know you and Joe and Keith will all appreciate, anybody who is participating in war games is able to be at the QBC. So yes, he is, Joe DeMayo is booked. Since Ibby said it, he approves. So I should also mention this Friday at 7 p.m. is going to be the first episode of Walk Off Whiskey.
Oh,
so
there we go. We're
going to do it this Friday.
Best to tune in. Yeah.
Yes, it'll be on this channel and all of the Til Mets Do Us parts channels, where we talk just your questions, your comments, for as long as it takes me to drink one glass of whiskey of my choosing. So that'll be Friday, this Friday, coming up, 7 p.m. Eastern. That is 4 p.m. out here on the West Coast, because I had to be late enough where it's okay to have a glass of whiskey. Maybe I can't start too early, but I can't start too late. It's the curse of the West Coast. So Armand thinks it's awesome. And all jokes aside, Field of Dreams whiskey is some good shit. I've never had that. So I should look into that. Thank you for the tip. No, not drunk thoughts. It is not going to be. Ibby, okay, we do have to get out of here, but Gab's saying that she's starting a rival podcast.
Ah, Jesus Christ. Please don't.
Is it going to be called Till Ibby Do Us part? We'll see. We'll see if we can get Gab on the show. I don't know how far your conversations have gotten with Gab, but we're trying to do something creative with Gab on the show. We'll see if we can make that happen. I don't know.
We will try. If she doesn't hate me enough, we'll see. We'll see.
I guess now I am going to have to reach out to Gab because she's got Ibby on the block list now. No more DMs. She's blocked you. Anyway, Ibby, anything we didn't get to before we get out of here?
Nothing. I think we hit everything the way we wanted to. Fantastic show. Thank you thank you everyone in the chat for participating. Thank you to the 515 people, which is a new high watermark for this offseason so far. Hopefully, the numbers keep on climbing as we grow further and further into the offseason, as the rumors continue to compile more and more. Hopefully next week we can top that number as it continues to climb right now at 517. Shout out to all of you. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. We've gained about 7 or 8 new subs over this live, which I appreciate.
Welcome.
Welcome. We're on our way towards 1,500 subs. Thank you so much. And another thing I wanted to throw out there real quick is not only liking the video, but once this video is over and it's posted to YouTube, stay on the channel and scroll over one and make sure you hype the video as well. It's a new feature on YouTube, which apparently helps with the algorithm as well. Hype up the video. It allows us to reach even more people. And thank you so much. I put it in the ticker or on the pinned comment on YouTube already, but just reminding everyone to do so. It would be greatly appreciated.
Didn't know they did that, but why not? Anything that they add, if you guys could do us a favor and partake in whatever thing that they're doing now on the algorithm, it would be much appreciated. So thank you for that. Keith Blacknick saying, is she talking about Gab in New York? Bring her to the QBC. And Gab in all caps, I am in New York. So maybe that's something we can do. I think I was going to suggest that, but I didn't know what Gab's travel schedule was like. And I don't think, Gab, you live in New York City. You don't have to give out your address here on a live stream, but if you want to come down to Flushing for the Queens baseball convention, it's a pretty long table. I'm pretty sure we can make room for both Joe DeMayo and Gab.
I think we could.
I think we could. Maybe we'll do an all-star thing, get a bunch of guests in, kind of get guests in, get guests out. I don't know. Another thing I was going to suggest was maybe bringing a comedian on the show. So if Chris Scopo wants to swing by the QBC,
so let's do his part, flexing the muscle for the show. I like it. I like it.
You know what? I will talk to all of these people off air, but I think,
we gotta get out of here. Yeah.
No, but I just think because they're all here right now.
Yeah,
I think Til Mets Do Us part with Joe DeMayo, with Gab, and with Chris would be really good. So we'll see if we can set it up off air. We'll work on it. But I think that might be, It's
a good one, Joe.
Yeah, it is a good, he says, we do need a comedian. Don't know another one. Keith Blacknick saying, see, this is why I book you guys. Yeah. So here we go. Let's do that. We'll set it up.
Let's do this. Yes.
I think that will be, because I know we have to go. Ibby has like a family to take care of, and I have to feed my dog.
Yes, they're yelling at me.
But we had been, just to peel back the curtain for a moment, Ibby and I were trying to decide the best way to do our show live for this year's QBC. Last year, we did our regular show, and then we fielded questions from the live audience because questions and comments is such a big part of our live show here, and that worked out really well. But I think getting some folks who have been on the show, getting some folks who have been a part of the QBC, and getting some folks who haven't been on the show and haven't been a part of the QBC is a great way to bridge all of the gaps and put this together. So I think that that's something that it would be awesome. And I think that's what we should do. So we'll try to set it up and make sure it's all copacetic, but everybody is pretty much agreeing to do it right now. So this is, you're contractually obligated. No. Anyway, I'm John. That's Ibby. Shout out to our guest in the first half. Abbey Mastracco covered the Mets for the New York Daily News. It was great information. Of course, she's headed down to the winter meeting. Safe travels to her. I'm sure we'll have her back on the show at some time in the future. We've got one more show before the Queens baseball convention. I'll be in New York. Ibby's going to be in New York. It's probably going to be a jam-packed show. The Queens baseball convention is amazing. This show has been live on YouTube, on Twitter, and on Substack. If you missed anything, as soon as we're done with the live broadcast, you can go back and watch it in its entirety. If you can't do any of that, the audio version will be posted in about an hour or two, and you can get that on Spotify, Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. We will see you guys next week. LGM. Peace.